I never expected my father's death to leave me with $14 million and a secret that could tear my family apart. The numbers were whispered at the funeral like a curse. 14 million. Imagine the land, the assets, the trust. But no one said it out loud. Not even my brother Mark. He just stood by the casket with that tight, polished smile of his, shaking hands and pretending to mourn. I couldn't shake the feeling he knew something I didn't. The lawyer confirmed it hours later. In a stuffy office that smelled like dust and leather, he laid out the will, each word striking like a hammer. The estate was split, half to me, half to Mark. But then came the line that silenced the room. All matters pertaining to the lockbox remain unresolved. Mark stiffened. My stomach turned cold. Lockbox? I asked. The lawyer avoided my eyes. Your father left no details, only that it rests on the property and must remain sealed for 30 days. After that, its contents will be accessible. Mark laughed, short and bitter. A box? That's the great mystery? The land is worth millions, and we're arguing about a box? But I saw it in his eyes, fear. That night, back at the house, I found it. The box sat in the study, perched on the mantel like it had been waiting for me. Heavy steel, edges worn. No markings except a strange sigil scratched into the lid. A brass keyhole gleamed at the center, but no key in sight. I touched it. Cold. Too cold. Like it had been sitting on ice. That's when I heard it whispers. Faint. Like voices pressing through the walls. I jerked back, heart hammering. The room was empty. Then the floor creaked. Mark stood in the doorway, his face half-shadowed. You found it. What is this? I asked. He didn't answer. He just stared at the box, eyes sharp, fists clenched. Finally he muttered, "It should have been mine. All of it." And he walked out. I couldn't sleep that night. The whispers followed me into every room. At midnight, my father's old Rolex, dead for years, ticked once on my wrist. Just one tick. Then silence. That's when I realized this wasn't about money. The 14 million was bait. The real inheritance was inside that box. And someone didn't want me to survive long enough to open it. By morning, the whispers hadn't stopped. They threaded through my dreams, voices curling like smoke around every thought. When I woke, the air was heavy, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. Mark was already outside, pacing the property with the surveyor and snapping photos on his phone. His suit looked ridiculous in the Texas dirt, but he didn't care. To him, the land was just numbers, dollars stacked in neat columns. When I stepped out onto the porch, he didn't even glance at me. I've already had calls. Developers, buyers. They're lining up. This place will fetch 8 million minimum. Split clean down the middle. We'll both walk away rich. I shook my head. Dad wanted us to keep it. He spent his whole life here. He didn't want it gutted for condos. Mark turned, his smile razor sharp. And what? You'll stay here, play farmer? Or worse, guard his little box like a dog on a leash? I stiffened. You know more than you're saying. His eyes flickered, just for a second, then hardened. The box is nothing, forget it, the land is the prize. But when he walked off toward his car, I caught the way his gaze darted back toward the study window, toward the box. That night, the whispers grew louder. They filled the halls, pressed against the windows, echoed through the pipes. I tried to drown them out with music, but every song warped into murmurs of my name. At midnight, the Rolex ticked again, 2 sharp clicks. The floorboards creaked in the study. I grabbed the revolver from Dad's desk drawer, heart pounding, and stepped inside. The box sat where I'd left it, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. And then I saw it. Scratches. Long, jagged scratches running across the lid, as if something had tried to claw its way out. I stumbled back, colliding with the bookshelf. A picture frame fell, glass shattering. For a moment I thought I heard my father's voice in the chaos, low, urgent, pleading. Endure. I barely slept. But at dawn, someone pounded on the door. It wasn't Mark. A tall man in a gray suit stood on the porch, calm as stone, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He carried a folder under one arm. You're Thomas? He asked. His voice was smooth, almost rehearsed. Yes. He glanced past me, into the house, as if he already knew what he'd find. Your father owed debts, large ones. They don't vanish just because he's gone. What debts? I demanded. The man smiled faintly. Open the box, and you'll know. But hurry, my employers don't like waiting. He handed me a card with nothing but a number on it, then turned and walked away. No car, no sound of an engine, just gone by the time I blinked. I stood frozen, card in hand, whispers swelling behind me like a storm. The box wasn't just family business. It was blood business, and my father had dragged me straight into it. The card burned in my pocket all day. A number, just a number. No name, no logo, no address. Every time I thought about dialing it, the whispers seemed to thicken, pressing against my skull. By sunset, I convinced myself I was imagining things. Maybe grief was twisting me up. Maybe the whispers were just the house groaning. The Rolex just a fluke. But then the dogs started barking. The property was empty. My father hadn't kept livestock in years, and yet, across the field, 3 shapes moved through the dusk. Tall, human, their steps deliberate. I grabbed the revolver and stepped onto the porch. "Who's there?" The figures didn't answer. They stopped at the fence line, shadows stretching long under the dying light. One of them raised a hand, pointing not at me, but at the house. My stomach turned. "Private property!" I shouted, my voice cracking more than I wanted. "Get the hell out!" The man in the center tilted his head. Even from 50 yards, I swore I heard his voice, low, slippery, carried on the wind. "Open the box." The whispers surged behind me, louder, like the house itself was echoing his demand. I fired a warning shot into the dirt. The blast rang through the evening. The figures didn't flinch. They just turned, one by one, and melted into the tree line like smoke. I stayed awake half the night, revolver in hand, staring at the study door. Midnight came, and the Rolex ticked again, 3 times. This time, the box rattled. I froze. The steel lid shivered, scratches deepening across its surface. A groan, no, a growl echoed inside it, like something trapped, pushing against the metal. Then silence. I backed out of the room, slammed the door, and locked it. But the whispers seeped through the walls anyway. Endure, endure, endure. By morning, Mark was back, angrier than ever. He stormed into the kitchen, phone in hand. "I don't care what Dad wrote, we're selling this place. There are developers already wiring deposits. Sign the papers, Tom." I slammed my fist on the table. "You don't get it. This land, it's cursed. There's something in that box, and Dad wanted us to guard it, not cash out." Mark's face twisted. "You sound just like him, raving about debts and shadows until the end. Do you even hear yourself?" Before I could reply, his phone buzzed. He went pale. He shoved it toward me. A text from an unknown number. "The debt must be paid. 30 nights. Or blood." Mark's hand shook. "What the hell is this?" I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. The house wasn't just haunted. It was keeping count. The text didn't leave my mind all day. 30 nights. Or blood. Mark tried to brush it off. Probably some scammer who knew Dad owed money. But I could see the tremor in his hands. He was afraid. By nightfall, the fear had teeth. Headlights rolled up the dirt road. Too many to count. Engines low and heavy. A caravan. I peered through the blinds, 5 trucks at least. Men spilling out of them in dark coats, rifles slung across their backs. Their boots crunched on gravel as they fanned out across the property. Mark cursed under his breath. Who the hell are they? I already knew. The debt collectors. A voice boomed from a bullhorn. "Thomas! Mark! You've got something that isn't yours. Open the box, or we'll open you." The house groaned in response. The whispers surged, no longer faint but roaring, filling the halls like a crowd pressing at invisible walls. Mark gripped my arm. "Call the cops." "Cops won't help," I muttered, because I wasn't sure these men were entirely alive. Glass shattered in the kitchen. 2 men climbed through the window, boots crunching on broken glass. I raised Dad's revolver and fired. One went down screaming, clutching his leg. The other didn't even blink, just kept coming, eyes flat, face expressionless. Then the box rattled. The steel shivered, sigil glowing faintly red. The whispers coiled together into a single, unearthly growl. And the man stopped, dead still, for a heartbeat. Silence. Then shadows tore from the corners of the study, stretching long across the floor, wrapping around his legs like black vines. His scream didn't sound human. Mark bolted backward, crashing into a chair. "What the hell is happening?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The shadows dragged the man toward the box, pulling him across the floor as his nails left bloody streaks in the wood. When he reached it, the box snapped once, like a massive iron jaw, and the room went dark. When the light returned, the man was gone. Outside, chaos erupted. Men shouted, rifles fired into the windows. Bullets punched holes in the walls, splinters flying. Mark and I ducked behind the counter as plaster rained down. And then, silence. The gunfire stopped mid-burst. I dared a glance outside. The men had frozen, every one of them staring toward the house, weapons limp at their sides. Their shadows, long, unnatural, were shifting on the ground, moving against the light, crawling toward us like living things. The bullhorn dropped with a thud. One word rang out, not from their mouths, but from the shadows themselves, echoing in unison. Open. By dawn, the yard was empty. No trucks, no men, no bodies, not even tire tracks in the dirt. If not for the shattered glass and bullet holes in the walls, I might have thought we imagined it all. Mark sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, knuckles white. His bravado from the day before was gone. He looked small, shaken. What was that? He whispered. I poured black coffee into a cracked mug, my hands trembling. That was Dad's debt. Mark slammed his palm on the table. Stop with the riddles. What the hell did he drag us into? I didn't answer, because I didn't know either. All I had were whispers, the box, and the ticking of a dead Rolex. That morning, I searched Dad's study for answers. Through drawers of unpaid bills, yellowed ledgers, and half-finished letters, I finally found it, a leather-bound journal tucked behind a stack of tax returns. My father's handwriting filled the pages, jagged and desperate. 30 nights. Endure them, and the debt resets. Fail, and the box takes what it wants. They come for it. Always. Protect it. Protect the bloodline. The words blurred as I read them again and again. Dad hadn't been talking about money. Not just money. This was something older. Something bound to the land itself. At the bottom of the page, one line stood out, underlined twice. The shadows obey the air. I slammed the book shut, chills crawling up my spine. Mark barged in, still pale. Developers pulled their offers. Word spreading about last night. About the land. We can't stay here, Tom. We have to get out. I shoved the journal into his chest. Read it. Dad wanted us here. He knew what was coming. Mark scanned the pages, his lips moving silently. Then he froze. 30 nights? His eyes snapped up to mine. We won't survive 30 nights of that. We don't have a choice. He laughed bitterly. Of course we do. We sell it. We hand the damn box to whoever wants it, and we walk away rich. I shook my head. It doesn't work like that. It has to stay with us. Mark's face twisted, hatred flaring. You think you're the heir? You think Dad trusted you more? No, Tom. He wanted me to lead. He knew I had the head for business. You. He jabbed a finger at me. You're weak. The Rolex ticked again. 4 sharp clicks. The sound silenced him. The box shivered on the mantel, the sigil glowing faintly. And then, my father's voice filled the room clear this time. Not a whisper, but a command. Choose sons. 1 heir. 1 box. 1 bloodline. Mark's eyes went wide. His jaw clenched. I realized in that moment it wasn't just about surviving 30 nights. It was about surviving each other. The journal's words echoed in my skull. 1 heir. 1 box. 1 bloodline. Mark didn't move for a long time. His fists were tight, his jaw rigid. Finally, he pushed the book back across the table like it was poison. I don't buy it. Dad was paranoid, raving. You're eating this up because you want to be the chosen one. It's not about wanting, I said. It's happening whether we believe or not. You heard him. You heard Dad's voice. Mark barked a bitter laugh. You mean the same voice that told him to sink every dime into this land? The same voice that drove Mom away? Yeah, real trustworthy. Before I could reply, the air shifted. Cold, heavy. The light in the kitchen bent, stretching shadows across the walls. The sigil on the box flared dimly, pulsing like a heartbeat. And the shadows moved. They slid across the floor, slow at first, then faster, circling the table where we sat. Mark jumped back, chair clattering. His eyes went wide. What the hell? The shadows coiled, splitting, shaping into vague forms. Human outlines, eyeless, faceless. They whispered in unison, the word tearing through the air. Air. Mark stumbled back, pale. They're choosing you. But as he said it, one of the shadows broke from the circle and wrapped around his leg. Mark screamed, kicking, but the darkness clung to him like tar. He grabbed a knife from the counter and slashed at it, but the blade passed through empty air. Help me, he shouted, wild panic in his eyes. I stood frozen, torn between terror and something darker. For a split second, I wondered if this was the choice. If the shadows wanted me, then maybe letting them take him would settle it. But then the box rattled violently, the sound like metal grinding bone. The shadows released Mark all at once, retreating into the corners. The kitchen fell silent, except for his ragged breaths. He turned to me, chest heaving, sweat dripping. His voice was hoarse but steady. That's what you wanted, wasn't it? You let them take me. You just stood there. That's not true. Save it. His eyes hardened into something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not fear, hatred. If it's between you and me, Tom, then I'll make damn sure I'm the one standing at the end. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That night, the Rolex ticked 5 times. I sat alone in the study, staring at the box. My reflection wavered in its steel surface, and behind it, I swore I saw another face, my father's, watching. The whispers rose again, louder than ever, twisting into a single command. Endure, or kill. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows wrapping around Mark's leg, heard his scream echoing in my skull. By dawn, the house felt hollow, as if something vital had been drained away. Mark hadn't returned. His truck was gone, his room stripped bare. I told myself he was cooling off somewhere in town, but deep down I knew better. He was planning. By noon, the rumble of engines shook the land again. I grabbed the revolver, heart pounding, and stepped onto the porch. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the house. Men in suits poured out sleek, efficient, not like the roughnecks from before. Their movements were synchronized, too clean. And at the center of them stood Mark. He looked rested, even smug. His tie loosened, like he was the one in control now. "Morning, brother," he called, his voice dripping with false cheer. "I brought help." "Help?" I spat. "You brought them here?" "These men represent buyers. Real buyers. People who can handle the box, who understand its value." His grin widened. "They're offering 15 million. That's more than Dad ever dreamed." The suited men fanned out across the yard, their polished shoes crunching gravel, their eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. None of them spoke. "You don't know what you're doing, Mark," I shouted. "The box doesn't belong to them. It doesn't belong to anyone but us." He spread his arms wide, like a showman. "Exactly. It belongs to the heir. And guess what, Tom? That's me. Dad knew I had the guts to make hard choices. You just cling to ghosts." One of the men stepped toward the porch, face blank. "We'll take the artifact now." The air shifted, heavy and cold. The whispers rose instantly, rattling the windows, slithering through the halls like snakes. The box responded, glowing faint red, steel humming like a struck bell. Mark didn't flinch. He waved the men forward. "Go ahead, take it. He's been hiding it in the study." "No." I raised the revolver, hand trembling. "You don't understand. If they open it, none of us walk away." The lead man ignored me, striding up the porch steps. Shadows stretched unnaturally behind him, writhing like living things. My finger tightened on the trigger. And then the Rolex ticked. 6 sharp clicks, louder than ever. The suited men froze. Every one of them. Their heads turned in perfect unison. Not toward the box. Not toward me. But toward Mark. The whispers surged into a single word. Deafening. "Thief." Mark stumbled back, his cocky smile shattering. "No, wait." The shadows lunged. They didn't strike the men in suits. They struck him. Dark tendrils wrapped around his arms, his chest, his throat. He thrashed, choking. As the men stood motionless, frozen like puppets with cut strings, I screamed, rushing forward, but the shadows dragged him across the dirt like he weighed nothing. Toward the porch steps, toward the study. Mark's eyes locked on mine, wide with terror. "Do something!" But the whispers were louder than his voice now, demanding, unrelenting. "Choose one heir." Mark's screams split the air as the shadows tightened, dragging him toward the study door. His fingernails tore through dirt and wood, leaving bloody streaks. I lunged forward, revolver still in my hand, and fired into the black tendrils. The bullets tore holes in the walls, the floorboards, even shattered a lamp, but the shadows didn't flinch. They thickened, writhing, pulling him closer to the glowing box. "Tom!" His voice cracked, desperate. "Don't let it take me!" The Rolex ticked once, twice, each click like a nail driving into my skull. The whispers rose in unison. "Endure, or kill." I dropped the gun and grabbed Mark's arms, yanking against the pull. The shadows resisted, stronger than any rope or chain. My muscles burned, my vision swam, but I didn't let go. "Fight it," I shouted. "You're stronger than this." Mark's eyes rolled white. He thrashed violently, choking. The shadows coiled tighter, and for a moment, I swore they were feeding on my effort too, growing stronger the more I resisted. Then, as if sensing my desperation, the box rattled. The sigil flared red, and the shadows paused, quivering, like animals awaiting command. A voice rang out, my father's, clear as day, vibrating through the walls. "Mercy is weakness. One heir, Thomas. One." I froze, trembling. My father's words? Or the boxes? I couldn't tell anymore. But I did what he never could. I refused. "No," I whispered. "Not like this." I grabbed the revolver from the floor, flipped it in my hand, and slammed the butt against the glowing sigil on the box. Sparks flew. The shadows shrieked, recoiling in unison. Mark collapsed to the ground, gasping, his skin pale, his body trembling like a man dragged back from drowning. The whispers turned to a roar, angry, defiant. The house itself shook. Lights flickered, pictures crashed from the walls, plaster rained down from the ceiling. Mark clung to me, coughing blood. His voice was hoarse, broken. "You saved me." But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see gratitude. I saw something else, resentment. That night, the Rolex ticked 7 times. Mark refused to meet my eyes. He sat in the corner of the study, staring at the box like it was a prize I'd stolen from him. His hands twitched constantly, restless, as if already planning his next move. I stayed by the mantel, revolver on my lap, watching the shadows slither restlessly along the walls. They weren't retreating anymore. They were waiting. And I knew the truth now. Saving Mark hadn't weakened the box. It had weakened me. The whispers pressed harder than ever, gnawing at the edges of my mind. Mercy has a cost. 30 nights. Pay in blood. I realized with a chill that I hadn't just saved my brother's life. I had given the box mine. I didn't remember falling asleep, but when I woke, the house was too quiet. The Rolex had ticked 7 times the night before. Its clicks still echoed in my head like phantom footsteps. My chest felt heavy, every breath shallow, as if some part of me had been siphoned away into the box. The study was empty. "Mark?" My voice cracked in the silence. No answer. Then I heard it, the scrape of metal. A low hum, the whispers rising like a tide. I staggered down the hall, clutching the revolver, and pushed open the study door. Mark was on his knees before the mantel, hands pressed to the steel box. His lips moved in frantic whispers, repeating words I couldn't understand. Ancient syllables, guttural and sharp. The sigil pulsed blood red beneath his palms. "Stop!" My voice was hoarse, desperate. He didn't even look up. "You don't get it, Tom. It chose me. It always did. You tried to fight it, to show mercy. But that's weakness." Dad knew. He knew I was the heir. The box rattled violently, the floor shaking underfoot. The shadows surged from the corners, crawling up Mark's arms like armor, weaving themselves around his chest, his throat. He gasped. But it wasn't pain, it was ecstasy. "I can feel it," he cried, eyes wide with mania. "It's giving me strength, real strength. While you," he sneered at me, "you're crumbling." I raised the revolver, hands trembling. "Mark, if you open it, none of us survive." He laughed, wild and sharp. "Then maybe that's the point. Maybe survival isn't the prize. Maybe it's power." The box shrieked, a metallic wail that split the air. The Rolex answered with 8 deafening ticks in rapid succession, louder than gunshots. The shadows thickened, writhing across the walls like 100 serpents. The room reeked of ozone and ash. Mark dug his nails into the sigil, blood streaking down his fingers. The box drank it in, glowing brighter, humming like a beast about to awaken. I fired. The bullet struck the wall inches from his head, wood exploding. "Get away from it!" He didn't flinch. His eyes locked on mine, glowing faintly red now. His grin feral. "Shoot me, and the box will claim you. Let me finish, and maybe, just maybe, I'll let you live." The shadows roared, pressing close around us both. My father's voice thundered once more, but it was fractured, distorted, like 1,000 voices layered atop one another. One heir, one bloodline. The other must fall. Mark's hand tightened on the box. My finger tightened on the trigger. For the first time, I realized this wasn't about surviving 30 nights. It was about the box forcing us to end each other and feeding on the outcome. The box pulsed like a living heart, shadows thickening until the study was swallowed in black. Only the crimson glow of the sigil lit Mark's face, half triumph, half madness. "Shoot me, Tom," he hissed, his voice layered with something inhuman. "End it. Give the box what it wants. Or admit I'm the stronger heir." My hand shook around the revolver. The Rolex ticked again 9 times, each click rattling my bones. "I don't want this," I whispered. I never wanted any of it. Mark rose to his feet, the shadows writhing around him like a crown. His eyes blazed red. "That's why you'll lose." He lunged at me, faster than I thought possible. I fired. The blast lit the room for a split second. Mark staggered, but didn't fall. The shadows caught the bullet, dissolving it mid-air like ash. He slammed me against the wall, his hands crushing my throat. The whispers screamed, "One must fall. One bloodline." My vision blurred. Spots danced before my eyes. Mark leaned close, his breath hot, his voice venom. "It was always me. Dad knew it. The box knows it. You're just the sacrifice." I felt the revolver slip from my grip. My fingers clawed at his arms uselessly. The shadows coiled tighter around him, feeding him, crowning him. And then, the Rolex ticked a 10th time. Not a click, a chime. The shadows froze. Mark faltered, confusion flickering across his face. The box rattled violently, the sigil blazing white-hot. And then it whispered, not to him, to me. "The heir is the one who refuses." I gasped, the words flooding my mind with fire. The shadows recoiled from my skin, shivering like they'd been burned. Mark's grip loosened for a fraction of a second enough. I snatched the revolver from the floor, flipped it in my hand, and slammed the barrel against the glowing sigil. The box screamed. A sound that wasn't sound, a tearing of the air itself. Shadows shrieked, ripping away from Mark, dragging him to the ground. His eyes went wide, fury turning to terror. "Tom, don't do this." But I pressed the gun harder, forcing the sigil to crack. Light burst through the seams, searing and blinding. The whispers rose one last time. One heir. Mark clawed at the floor, his body splitting between flesh and shadow, his scream lost in the roar of the box. And then, silence. When the light faded, only I remained. The box sat cracked and dark, its hum gone. The Rolex lay beside it, frozen at 10 ticks. Mark was gone. Not dead, just gone. As if erased. For 3 nights I stayed in that house, waiting for the whispers to return. They didn't. The shadows never came back. On the 4th morning, I buried the revolver in the field and left the ranch behind. But the box? I didn't destroy it. Couldn't. I sealed it beneath the floorboards of the study, hidden where no one would find it. Because, deep down, I knew the truth. It hadn't ended. It had only chosen me. And one day, it would want more. My father left me nothing but a watch, a letter, and a key. That's what the lawyer said. No house, no land, no bank account. Just 3 items, wrapped in a plain brown envelope with my name scrawled across the front. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke. My father, Richard, had built a fortune in ways no one ever quite understood. Oil leases, shady land deals, rumors of cartel money. Everyone in town whispered about his empire, and everyone assumed I'd inherit at least a slice of it. Instead, I sat in the lawyer's oak-paneled office, staring at a scratched Rolex Submariner, a brass key with no tag, and a single-page letter that looked like it had been pulled from the 70s. 14 million. 30 nights. Don't trust the brands. And don't open the box until you've earned it. $14 million. My stomach turned over. The lawyer didn't explain, didn't offer more. Just shook his head like he wanted me gone. That's all he left. Whatever it means, it's yours to figure out. I slipped the Rolex on my wrist, the brass key into my pocket, and folded the letter with trembling hands. I told myself it was just another of my father's twisted games, the kind he'd played my entire childhood. But I couldn't ignore the number. 14 million. If it was true, it meant more than inheritance. It meant danger. The drive back to the ranch was long and hot. Dust devils chased my car along the empty Texas road. Every mile felt heavier. When I reached the old house, the cicadas were screaming, and the shutters banged against the siding like fists. It looked abandoned, though I knew my father had lived there until his final day. The watch ticked steadily on my wrist as I walked up the creaking porch. Inside, everything smelled of whiskey and tobacco. Dust coated the leather couch, and a line of dead moths lay beneath the window. But what unsettled me most was the silence. My father's house had never been quiet. I found the box the letter mentioned on the mantel. A heavy steel lockbox, scarred and dented, with a keyhole that matched the brass key in my pocket. I held it for a long time, the weight pulling at my arms, the key slick with sweat in my hand. But I didn't open it. Something about the words 30 nights stopped me cold. My father never chose words lightly. If he said 30 nights, he meant it. So I left the box on the mantel. That night, I lay in my old childhood bedroom, staring at the cracked ceiling. The Rolex glowed faintly in the dark. At exactly midnight, its second hand stopped, and the whispers began. Not outside, not in the hall, from inside the house itself. 14 million. 30 nights. The voice was low, broken, like breath over glass. I sat up, every muscle locking tight, the letter burning in my pocket. And then I realized, the voice wasn't my father's. The whispers didn't stop. They slid through the cracks in the walls, curling around my bed frame, brushing my ears like cold fingers. Sometimes they muttered numbers, 14, 14. Sometimes names I didn't recognize. By dawn, the second hand on the Rolex ticked forward again, as though nothing had happened. I stumbled into the kitchen, nerves shot, and poured myself a coffee. That's when I saw it. A boot print in the dust by the back door. Fresh. Too fresh. Someone had been inside while I slept. I grabbed the brass key from my pocket, clutching it like a weapon. The box still sat on the mantel where I'd left it, heavy and silent, but the air around it felt charged, like static before a storm. Later that afternoon, I drove into town. I needed answers about the letter, the 30 nights, the brands. The clerk at the feed store, an old-timer who'd known my father, stiffened when I asked. His eyes darted to the door, then back to me. Son, you don't want to tangle with the brands. Whole family's poison. Your daddy knew that better than anyone. What kind of poison? I pressed. He lowered his voice. The kind that don't mind spilling blood over money that isn't theirs. When I pushed again, he shook his head. If your daddy said don't trust him, then don't. That's all you need to know. By the time I got back to the ranch, the sun was sinking blood red. My gut twisted as I saw it. The front door ajar. I killed the engine, heart pounding, and crept up the steps. The hinges groaned as I pushed inside. The house smelled different. Not of dust, not of whiskey, of cologne. Strong, musky, unfamiliar. Someone had been here. Again, I found the evidence in the living room. A single matchbook on the coffee table, printed with a name in bold letters. The Broken Spoke. A rundown bar 20 miles south. And next to it, a playing card. The Ace of Spades. My blood went cold. The brands weren't hiding anymore. That night, I tried to stay awake. The Rolex ticked. The house groaned. My nerves frayed. Around midnight, the whispers returned. But this time, they weren't alone. I heard boots scuffing on the porch. A shadow stretched across the crack under my bedroom door. "Open up, boy," a drawl said, low and rough. "We know what your daddy left you. Hand it over, and we'll make this easy." My throat locked. I glanced at the mantel. The steel box sat in plain sight, the brass key burning a hole in my pocket. The door rattled. "Don't make us come in." I reached for the drawer of my nightstand, my hand closing around cold steel, my father's old revolver. I cocked the hammer, just as the doorknob turned. The doorknob twisted once, then twice, before the door exploded inward with a crack of splintering wood. Two men filled the frame broad, scarred, their eyes black with intent. One carried a shotgun loose at his side. The other grinned with a chipped tooth and flicked open a switchblade like he was greeting an old friend. I didn't think. I raised my father's revolver and pulled the trigger. The blast shook the room. The switchblade man screamed, clutching his arm as blood sprayed the wall. The second man roared and swung the shotgun up, but I dove behind the bed as buckshot shredded the headboard into splinters. The Rolex ticked steadily on my wrist, like it was keeping count of every second I might still be alive. "Goddamn kid's armed," one of them shouted. "Take the box! Forget him!" the other snapped. I scrambled into the hall as they barreled toward the mantel. The steel box gleamed in the moonlight through the broken window. My father's letter burned in my pocket. "Don't trust the Brands." I raised the revolver again, hands shaking, and fired. The bullet caught the shotgun man in the leg. He bellowed and collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor. The other one, wounded and wild-eyed, grabbed the steel box with his good arm. I charged him. We crashed into the wall, the box slamming into my ribs. Pain shot through me, but adrenaline kept me upright. His knife hand whipped out, grazing my side. I felt the sting of blood, hot and sharp. We wrestled, the whispers swelling around us, louder, clearer now. 30 nights, the Brands will bleed. It wasn't just in my head. I swear the house itself was speaking. The man's grip faltered. I drove my fist into his jaw. He crumpled, unconscious, the box slipping from his hands onto the floor. Silence fell, broken only by the groaning of the man bleeding on the porch. The other lay sprawled at my feet, chest rising shallow and fast. My side burned where the knife had kissed me, but I barely felt it. My eyes were on the box, unopened, untouched, waiting. I bent down, the brass key trembling in my blood-slick hand. I almost slid it into the lock. Almost. But my father's voice, or what I thought was his voice, whispered in my ear. "Not yet. 30 nights." I froze. Headlights washed over the house. Tires crunched on gravel. I staggered to the window just in time to see another car pull up sleek, black and polished. Not like the rusted pickup the Brands drove. This one was different. Cleaner. Professional. A woman stepped out, tall and sharp in a gray suit, her blonde hair pulled tight. She didn't look like she belonged here. Her eyes swept the house, lingering on the broken door, the blood, the box at my feet. She smiled, and then she walked toward me. She stepped across the threshold like she owned the place, heels clicking against the warped floorboards, her gray suit untouched by the dust and blood that clung to everything else. Behind her, the Brands groaned where they lay. She didn't even glance at them. Her attention was fixed squarely on me. "Richard's boy," she said, voice smooth as glass. "You look just like him, though maybe a little less disciplined." My grip on the revolver tightened. "Who the hell are you?" She smiled like I'd asked the right question. "Evelyn, executor of a trust your father never mentioned. And before you ask, yes, the Rolex, the letter, the key, the box, all of it falls under my jurisdiction." The way she said jurisdiction made my skin crawl. She circled the living room slowly, inspecting the wreckage. The unconscious man bleeding on the floor, the broken door, the steel box gleaming on the mantel. "You've had a busy first night," she murmured. "I admire that you're still breathing." "Those men," I began. "The Brands," she cut me off. "They don't scare easily, but they're nothing compared to what's coming. That box doesn't just contain money, Thomas. It contains obligations. Debts your father never paid. If you think the Brands are the only ones who want what's inside, you're already dead." My stomach tightened. "So why are you here?" "To make sure you survive long enough to hand it over properly," she said. "Richard trusted me. You should too." I almost laughed. Trust? My father's letter had been clear. Don't trust the Brands. He hadn't said anything about Evelyn, but something in her smile made me want to put a bullet between her eyes. Instead, I said nothing. She walked to the mantel and laid her hand gently on the steel box. "He was right to make you wait 30 nights. The box isn't just locked, it's sealed. It needs time. Ritual. The inheritance matures only if you endure." The whispers rose, curling like smoke around her words. 30 nights. Endure. Endure. She seemed to hear them too, though she didn't flinch. She turned back to me, her eyes sharp. "So, here's my advice, Thomas. Stay alive. Don't open the box until the 30th night. And when you do, call me first. She slid a card across the table. A phone number, embossed in gold. No name, no company, just digits. Do that, she said, and you'll walk away richer than you can imagine. Fail, and you'll join your father in the ground. With that, she stepped back onto the porch. The black car door slammed, and the engine growled to life. I stood frozen, revolver hanging limp at my side, the card burning in my hand, 2 brands bleeding on my floor, a box humming with secrets. And now Evelyn, a stranger who claimed to know my father better than I ever had. The Rolex ticked. Midnight had passed. Night 2 was coming. And I realized I wasn't just fighting for an inheritance. I was fighting to survive 30 nights that were designed to break me. I barely slept. Every creak of the house set my nerves on edge. The Rolex ticked louder than a hammer in my ears. By dawn, I'd bandaged the knife wound at my side with duct tape and an old rag, pacing the living room like a caged animal. The brands would be back. I knew it. Sure enough. By midday, dust plumes rose on the horizon. Trucks. 2 of them this time. I grabbed the revolver, checked the bullets 2 left, and cursed under my breath. My father had never believed in modern rifles. A man should fight up close if it matters, he used to say. Well, it mattered now. The trucks roared up the gravel drive, engines snarling. 4 men spilled out. The wounded pair from last night weren't among them. These were fresh faces. Younger. Meaner. One of them carried a crowbar. Another a hunting rifle slung casual over his shoulder. Their leader, tall and thin with a snake tattoo curling up his neck, spat into the dirt and grinned at me through the broken doorway. Afternoon, son. Hand over the box, and we'll pretend last night didn't happen. I raised the revolver. Step inside, and you'll find out what happened. He chuckled. You think you're the only one who can shoot? He motioned to the man with the rifle. Show him. The rifle cracked. Wood exploded inches from my head. I dove behind the couch, heart pounding. Bullets tore into the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. The whispers surged again, hissing in my ears. 30 nights. Blood for blood. The brands didn't seem to hear them. Or maybe they did, and didn't care. I crawled toward the mantel. The steel box sat where it always had, gleaming like bait. One of the men started for it. Crowbar raised. I popped up from behind the couch and fired. The revolver roared. The crowbar clanged to the floor, and the man screamed as blood blossomed from his shoulder. The other shouted, firing wild. I ducked low, but I was out of bullets. My father's revolver clicked empty, and that's when the black car returned. It barreled up the drive, kicking gravel, horn blaring. Doors flew open, and Evelyn stepped out, calm, as if she were arriving at a luncheon. 2 men in black suits followed, each with pistols drawn. The brands froze. Snake Tattoo spat again, but his grin faltered. Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. Gentlemen, this isn't your fight. Snake Tattoo sneered. Lady, you got no idea what fight this is. Evelyn tilted her head. On the contrary, I know exactly, and I suggest you walk away, unless you'd like your debts called in tonight. Something in her tone made the brands hesitate. Their leader's grin slipped. With a sharp whistle, he motioned his men back to the trucks. They left with promises spat into the dust. This ain't over. 30 nights is a long time. The silence afterward was worse than the gunfire. Evelyn stepped over the bullet casings and broken wood, her eyes settling on me. You see now? You need me. Without me, you won't last 2 more nights. I wanted to tell her to go to hell, but the box still hummed on the mantel, the Rolex ticked, and my revolver was empty. She was right. And that terrified me more than the brands. The house looked like a battlefield. Shattered glass glittered across the floor. Bullet holes pocked the walls. Blood smeared the porch where one of the brands had crawled away. Evelyn didn't seem to notice. She brushed dust from her sleeve and sat at my father's old dining table, crossing her legs with a grace that didn't belong in this house. Sit, she said. Not asked. Ordered. I stayed standing. Her eyes flicked to the revolver in my hand. Useless now. Then back to my face. You've survived 2 nights, she said softly. That's more than your father expected. But survival won't be enough. I clenched my jaw. Start talking. What's in the box? She smiled faintly. The better question is, what's outside of it? Because what you saw tonight, those men, they're nothing compared to what's already circling. Circling? Her voice dropped. Your father owed money, Thomas. Not just to the brands. To institutions older than them. Older than me. 14 million wasn't wealth. It was a marker. A blood debt. The Rolex ticked. Steady. Loud. I felt my throat dry. And you expect me to just carry it? I expect you to endure, she said. 30 nights in this house with the box unopened. That was his command. Endure, and you'll inherit not just money, but the power that money was tied to. Fail. She let the word hang. I swallowed hard. Why 30 nights? Because that's how long it takes to break a man or forge one. Your father was broken by the 21st night. He begged to be released. But he finished all 30, and when he opened the box, she leaned closer. He wasn't the same man. He was stronger, but he was no longer only himself. Her words crawled under my skin. You mean? Yes, she whispered. The voices you've heard, they're not madness. They're the residue of everyone who came before. 30 nights in this house is a crucible, and the box isn't a reward, it's a door. The air in the room seemed to pulse. The steel box on the mantel shivered, ever so slightly, as if stirred by her words. I stepped back. No, I didn't sign up for this. You didn't have a choice, Evelyn said calmly. Your father chose for you. I shook my head, heat rising in my chest. All my life he made choices for me. He lied, he manipulated, he kept secrets, and now, even dead, he's still pulling the strings. I won't do it. Her eyes hardened. Then you'll die. The words landed like cold steel. No hesitation, no pity, just fact. I wanted to scream, to throw the damn box into the fire and walk away. But the Rolex ticked, louder now, syncing with my heartbeat. My eyes kept pulling back to the box, the brass key heavy in my pocket. Evelyn rose gracefully. You'll open it on the 30th night, Thomas, or you'll be buried before dawn. She walked to the door, pausing only once to glance back at me. And remember, if you trust anyone but me, you won't last the week. The door clicked shut behind her. The whispers filled the silence. Endure, endure, endure. The third night began with the sound of chains rattling in the walls. At first I thought it was the wind dragging loose, guttering against the siding. But when I pressed my ear to the plaster, the noise came from inside. Heavy links scraping stone. Moving closer, link by link, the Rolex ticked 11, 59, then froze. The chains stopped, and the whispers surged louder than ever. Endure. Blood for blood. The brands will bleed. I backed into the living room, revolver useless in my hand, eyes locked on the steel box. The brass key in my pocket felt like it was burning. I almost jammed it into the lock just to end the noise. That's when I saw the first shadow. It stretched across the far wall, tall and crooked, shoulders bent like broken branches. But there was nothing there to cast it. No figure, no light. Just the shadow itself, moving closer, its mouth opening wider and wider until it stretched from floor to ceiling. I stumbled back, tripped over the couch, and crashed to the floor. Then headlights cut through the window. Engines, trucks. The brands were back. I scrambled to the porch as two trucks skidded into the drive, doors slamming open. Snake Tattoo led the charge this time, rifle raised, his men spilling out behind him. He stopped short when he saw me standing in the doorway, pale, sweating, revolver shaking in my hand. You look like hell, boy, he called, grinning. Box keeping you up at night? His men laughed. I wanted to scream at them that it wasn't the box, it was the house, that something else was clawing its way out of the walls. But the words stuck in my throat. They wouldn't believe me. Snake Tattoo spat into the dirt. You're soft. We'll put you out of your misery. He raised his rifle, and the house screamed. Not a whisper, not a groan. A full-throated scream that shook the glass from the windows and made the ground quake beneath our feet. The brands froze. Their rifles wavered. Jesus Christ, one of them muttered. Snake Tattoo's grin faltered. What the hell was that? Before I could answer, shadows spilled across the porch, long and jagged, clawing at the brand's boots. One of them fired blind, the bullet ricocheting into the night. Another dropped his weapon and bolted for the truck. Snake Tattoo stood his ground, but his face was white. He pointed his rifle at me anyway. That box, whatever's in it, it's ours. If it kills you first, so be it. The house screamed again, louder, and then the shadows surged toward them. I didn't wait to see what happened. I slammed the door shut and stumbled back to the mantel. The Rolex ticked again, second hand jerking forward, as if nothing had happened. But outside, the brands shouted, cursed, and fired into the dark. I dropped to my knees, shaking, the whispers filling my skull. Endure. 30 nights. Endure. I wanted to run. I wanted to take the key, open the box, and end it all. But my father's voice cut through the whispers, clear as if he stood right behind me. Don't you dare quit, boy. Don't you dare. By dawn, the brands were gone. I found their truck half buried in the ditch a mile down the road, doors hanging open, engine still ticking. Blood smeared the seats, but no bodies, just silence and crows circling overhead. Whatever the shadows had done, it hadn't been quick. When I limped back to the house, the steel box sat exactly where it always did on the mantel, humming faintly, like it had a pulse. The Rolex ticked steady on my wrist. 6:00 a.m. That's when I realized something. The brands hadn't scared me as much as the house did. By noon, Evelyn returned. Same sleek black car, same perfect gray suit. She didn't knock. She stepped into the wreckage like she owned it, glanced at the shattered windows, the bullet holes, the dried blood on the floor. You're still here, she said flatly. Barely. She looked at me with cool amusement. And yet, alive, which means the house is beginning to tolerate you. It doesn't scream like that for strangers. I stiffened. You heard it? She nodded once. The house chooses. It always has. That's why your father survived his 30 nights. And why the brands won't. They can fight all they want, but the house will never accept them. It has already chosen you. The words chilled me more than the shadows had. I didn't ask for this. You don't get to ask, she said. Inheritance isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a sentence. She walked to the mantel, her hand hovering just above the steel box. The whispers grew louder, like static hissing from a broken radio. What do they say to you? She asked suddenly. I hesitated. Numbers, names, blood. Sometimes they sound like my father. Her lips curved. Good. That means you're listening. That means you're learning. I shook my head. No, it means I'm going insane. Insanity is simply knowledge you weren't ready to hold, she said. Her hand dropped, and she turned to face me. The brands are just muscle. They smell money, nothing else. But you're starting to understand that it isn't about the 14 million. It's about what the money bought. And what was that? I demanded. Her eyes glinted. Access to things most men would burn kingdoms to glimpse. Your father bought his power in blood. Now it's your turn to decide whether you'll keep it. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the box. The shadows hadn't returned. The house was silent. But the silence wasn't empty. It felt watchful. And for the first time, I understood what Evelyn meant. The house had chosen me, not because I was strong, not because I was worthy, because I was trapped. And as the Rolex ticked toward midnight, I realized something worse than death might be waiting on the 30th night. The 9th night began with silence. Too much silence. The house usually groaned, whispered, or pulsed with that strange heartbeat. But this time, nothing. Even the cicadas outside were dead quiet. That's when I smelled smoke. I rushed to the hallway, heart pounding, revolver uselessly heavy in my hand. Thin streams of smoke curled from the baseboards, seeping out like veins. The walls themselves seemed to smolder. I pressed my palm to the plaster it burned. Then headlights flared through the broken windows. Trucks again. The brands. But this time, they weren't storming in with rifles blazing. They were circling the house, tossing bottles with burning rags through the shattered windows. Molotovs. The walls screamed as the fire caught, not the usual whispers. Not even the soul-tearing shrieks I'd heard before. This was different, deeper, furious, like the whole foundation was alive and howling. The floor trembled beneath my feet. I staggered back toward the living room. Flames licked across the curtains, swallowing them whole. Smoke filled my lungs, choking me. That's when Evelyn appeared like she'd stepped out of the fire itself, calm, unburned, her gray suit immaculate. You see? She said, her voice carrying through the roar. The brands have finally understood. They can't take the house, so they'll destroy it. And with it, you. Coughing, I pointed at the box. Then help me put this damn thing out. Her eyes narrowed. No. Let the house defend itself. That's what this trial is. Endure, trust it, or die with it. The walls shook harder. Cracks split down the plaster. From them poured shadows thicker than before, writhing like smoke-made flesh. They coiled across the ceiling, slithered along the floor, and burst through the windows like living fire hoses. I heard screams outside. The brands, caught in the dark. One of them fired his rifle, the shot cracking uselessly into the night. Another shrieked as the shadows dragged him into the flames. Snake Tattoo's voice cut through the chaos. Burn it down. Burn the box, or it'll burn us all. The house roared back at him. The sound split the air, shaking glass, rattling the steel box against the mantel. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, the whispers flooding in again, louder, faster, overlapping. Endure. 30 nights. The debt will be paid. Endure. Through the haze of fire and shadow, I saw Evelyn's face. Calm. Watching me. Testing me. You're beginning to see, aren't you? She said softly. This isn't about your father. It isn't even about money. The house is binding itself to you. Every scream, every shadow, it's yours to command, if you survive. I don't want it, I shouted. Her smile was ice. Then why haven't you run? The fire died as suddenly as it had started. The shadows retreated back into the walls, leaving only scorch marks and silence. Outside, the brand's trucks were gone. Nothing left but twisted tire tracks in the dirt. The Rolex ticked forward. Midnight had passed. Night 10 had ended. I sat on the floor, shaking, smoke still thick in my lungs. Evelyn stood over me, her silhouette framed by the dying embers. You're stronger than he was by this point, she whispered. Your father broke on night 9. But you, she leaned down, eyes glinting, you might actually survive. By the 10th night, I barely recognized myself. The mirrors in the house showed a man with hollow eyes, lips cracked from smoke, skin smudged with soot and blood. My father's revolver hung from my hand like dead weight. The Rolex ticked steady, but each second felt heavier, as though time itself was pressing me down. Evelyn sat across from me at the dining table, untouched by the chaos of the last days, not a hair out of place. You're beginning to look like him, she said, tilting her head. By night 10, Richard looked exactly the same, half dead, half transformed. I didn't answer. My eyes were fixed on the steel box. The brass key was warm in my pocket. Too warm. Sometimes it pulsed, like a heartbeat. "What's inside?" I asked finally, my voice ragged. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "What's always inside? Debt, power, memory. It isn't the what that matters, Thomas. It's the who. Open it, and you'll carry them. All of them." The whispers surged in response, filling the air, rattling the glass in the windows. I heard words clearer than ever before. Blood, debt, father, son, 30 nights. Endure. My hand closed around the key. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "You could end it now. Open the box. You'd know everything. You'd inherit everything. The brands would scatter like rats." My breath hitched. "And if I'm not ready?" Her eyes darkened. "Then it kills you. Slowly." Outside, engines rumbled again. Trucks. More of them this time, dozens. Their headlights cut through the trees, beams crisscrossing like searchlights. The brands hadn't given up. They'd multiplied. Snake Tattoo's voice carried over a bullhorn. "We know you're in there. You can't hide behind that box forever. Open it, or we burn you alive." My heart slammed against my ribs. Flames, shadows, whispers they'd all return. I couldn't survive another attack. Evelyn's gaze pinned me. "This is the moment, Thomas. Decide. Open the box, or let the house consume them all and you with it." I pulled the key from my pocket. It glinted in the dim light, edges sharp, heavy with expectation. My hand shook as I brought it toward the lock. The box thrummed, louder than ever. The whispers rose to a deafening chorus. Voices layered over each other until they became a roar. "Open, open, open." The floor trembled. The windows shattered inward. Shadows poured across the ceiling like storm clouds, stretching toward me, urging, demanding. Evelyn's eyes burned with hunger. "Do it." My hand hovered over the lock. Sweat dripped into my eyes. The trucks outside roared louder. The brands were shouting, chanting, ready to break the house to its foundations. The key touched the lock. The whispers fell silent. For the first time in 10 nights, silence. I froze. The house waited. Evelyn waited. Even the brands outside seemed to wait. I drew a breath, heart hammering, and twisted. The 30th night came like a storm. I hadn't slept in days. My body was broken burns on my arms, bruises across my ribs, eyes red from smoke and shadows. But the Rolex ticked toward midnight, and I knew it would all end tonight, one way or another. The brands returned with everything they had: trucks, rifles, fire. Snake Tattoo led them, his voice tearing through a bullhorn. "Give us the box, or we burn you with it." The house groaned, walls trembling, shadows already stretching like claws. The whispers in my head were no longer whispers. They were voices, dozens of them. My father's among them. "Endure, son. Open it." Evelyn stood by the mantel, calm, eyes gleaming. "This is it, Thomas. The house has chosen. Either you carry the debt, or you die with it." I pulled the brass key from my pocket. It burned in my hand. The brands stormed the porch, rifles raised. The shadows surged to meet them. Screams split the night as darkness devoured them one by one. Snake Tattoo burst through the doorway, fire in his eyes, only to freeze when he saw me with the key poised at the lock. I twisted. The steel box shuddered, then cracked open. A wave of sound slammed through the house, thousands of voices, shrieking, weeping, commanding. The shadows didn't just surge, they obeyed. The brands outside were swallowed whole, rifles clattering uselessly to the ground. I staggered, nearly consumed myself. But the Rolex pulsed against my wrist, anchoring me. The voices bent, folding inward, until they flowed through me. And then silence. Evelyn smiled. "Now you understand. It was never about money. It was about power. And it's yours." I looked at the empty box. The debt was mine now. The house was mine. But so were the voices. And they would never be silent again. $37 million. That was the number printed in bold at the top of the letter that changed my life. But beneath it, in neat cursive, was a warning. Every fortune carries a cost. Claim this inheritance, and you may pay with more than money. I laughed when I first read it. 37 million was more money than I could ever imagine. The idea that some shadowy cost could outweigh it seemed ridiculous. But by the time I finished the letter, by the time I stood at the gates of my late uncle's crumbling estate, I wasn't laughing anymore. The house loomed in the fog, massive and decayed, its windows like blind eyes staring down at me. The driveway was littered with weeds breaking through cracked asphalt. Every instinct screamed to turn around. But that number, 37 million, burned in my head like fire. I pushed open the iron gates. They groaned like something alive, echoing into the mist. My footsteps crunched gravel as I crossed the courtyard, letter clutched in my sweaty palm. Inside, the house smelled of dust and old wood. A chandelier swayed gently above me, though there was no draft. My uncle had been eccentric, sure, but the stories about him had always sounded exaggerated. Whispers about rituals, about secret rooms. Nonsense. Or so I thought. On the grand table in the entry hall lay another envelope, sealed in crimson wax. My name was written across it. Hands trembling, I tore it open. Inside was a single line, 30 nights. Survive them all, and the fortune is yours. My pulse thundered in my ears. 30 nights? Of what? Alone in this place? I almost crumpled the letter then and there. But then I saw it tucked behind the note was a check. Dated. Signed. Stamped. 37 million. Real. Tangible. I swallowed hard. 30 nights suddenly didn't feel so impossible. I carried my bag upstairs, every floorboard moaning under my weight. The second-floor hallway stretched endlessly, lined with faded portraits whose eyes seemed to follow me. In the guest room, the bed was freshly made, though no one had lived here in years. As I unpacked, a sharp sound broke the silence. Tick. I froze. Tick. Not from a clock. From my wrist. I hadn't worn a watch in years. Slowly, I looked down. A Rolex gleamed on my arm, though I'd never seen it before. Its second hand twitched unnaturally, clicking once every few breaths. My stomach turned. I pulled at it, desperate to remove it, but the band clung tight, as if fused to my skin. The watch clicked again, and then I heard it, a faint whisper, curling through the air like smoke. Welcome, air. The whisper lingered long after it faded, echoing in my skull like a thought that wasn't mine. Welcome, air. I ripped at the watch again, skin reddening under the pressure, but it refused to budge. The Rolex ticked once more, steady, deliberate like a countdown. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress, exhaustion, the weight of that check burning a hole in my pocket. I had to be hallucinating. Still, I locked the guest room door before I lay down. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the house felt magnified. Every gust of wind against the shutters sounded like someone breathing at the window. Around midnight, I finally drifted off, only to wake in total darkness. The bedside lamp was dead. My phone, too. The only light came from the faint glow of the Rolex dial. Tick. My pulse raced. I sat up, listening. Something moved in the hallway. Not footsteps exactly, more like dragging. Uneven, as if someone were pulling themselves along the floor. It stopped outside my door. I held my breath. The doorknob rattled once, twice. Then it turned slowly. I had locked it. I knew I had. The knob kept turning until it clicked open. The door swung an inch, just enough for a shadow to spill across the carpet. I forced myself to stand, heart hammering. Who's there? My voice was barely a whisper. Silence, then a rasp, low and guttural. 30 nights. I lunged forward and slammed the door shut. The shadow recoiled, twisting unnaturally before vanishing into the crack beneath the doorframe. For hours, I sat with my back against the door, revolver-shaped fear in my hand, though I had no weapon. When morning came, sunlight filtered weakly through the curtains. The watch ticked once more and then fell silent, as if satisfied. I thought maybe I'd dreamt it. Maybe exhaustion had broken something in my mind. But when I opened the door, the hallway floorboards bore fresh gouges, long parallel scratches, as though fingernails or claws had dragged across the wood. And taped to the wall was another envelope. My name, again. Inside, a note. That was only the beginning. Survive tonight, and the next will be worse. 37 million waits at the end. Do you still want it? My hands shook. My instinct screamed to run, to leave the house behind and never look back. But then I pictured the check again. 37 million. A future free of debt, free of struggle. I shoved the letter into my pocket and whispered aloud, as if convincing myself, I can last 30 nights. But deep down, I already knew whatever was inside this house had no intention of letting me last that long. Daylight made the house seem almost ordinary. Almost. The scratches in the hallway remained, etched deep into the wood, undeniable proof that what I'd seen wasn't just a dream. I spent the day exploring. Every door creaked open to reveal rooms frozen in time. A study lined with dust-choked books. A dining hall with plates still set as if for a meal never eaten. A nursery where a broken rocking horse swayed gently, though no wind stirred. But what disturbed me most was the mirror in the upstairs bathroom. Its surface rippled faintly, like water when I stared too long. And behind my reflection, for the briefest second, I thought I saw someone else standing in the room, watching. By sundown, the air itself seemed heavier. The house exhaled with the setting sun, and I braced myself for the second night. I barricaded the door with a dresser this time, checked the lock 3 times, sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the Rolex glowing faintly on my wrist. Tick. The sound echoed through the silence. This time, I didn't even try to sleep. At precisely midnight, the lights flickered and died. I clutched a flashlight, but its beam sputtered and died too. Only the Rolex remained lit, casting a sickly glow on my trembling hands. Tick. The air grew cold. Frost crept across the window pane, though it was summer outside. My breath fogged before me. And then, the mirror. From down the hall came a sharp crack, like glass splitting. Another, then another. I crept toward the door, every instinct screaming to stay put, but curiosity dragged me forward. The dresser scraped loudly as I pushed it aside. I opened the door a crack. The mirror in the bathroom was glowing faintly. Something moved inside it. I edged closer, steps careful on the groaning floorboards. My reflection stared back, wide eyes, pale face, but it wasn't moving like I was. When I lifted my hand, it didn't. When I breathed, its chest stayed still. And then it smiled. My stomach lurched. I stumbled back, slamming against the hallway wall. The reflection tilted its head, grinning wider, and raised a hand smeared with black liquid that dripped down the inside of the glass. 2 nights, it whispered, though its lips never moved. The glass cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread across the mirror, and from the breaks oozed a thick, tar-like substance that dripped onto the tiles. I ran back to my room, slamming the door, dragging the dresser across again. Behind me, I heard the mirror shatter. Then the dragging sound returned, closer this time, moving along the hallway wall, scraping, searching. Tick! I pressed my back to the door, clutching the flashlight like a weapon, praying the thing stayed on the other side. The Rolex ticked again. And then, silence. When dawn came, I found the bathroom spotless. No broken glass, no black tar, just a pristine mirror. Except my reflection's smile lingered a second too long before it faded. By the 3rd day, exhaustion had dug its claws into me. My hands shook constantly, and every corner of the house seemed to hold a threat. I tried to keep busy, searching for hidden rooms, checking old records in the study, anything to distract myself from the dread of nightfall. That's when I found the ledger. It was buried beneath stacks of yellowed paper in the study, its leather binding cracked with age. Inside were names, dozens of them scrawled in my uncle's sharp handwriting. Next to each name was a number: 7, 14, 29. The final name was mine. Next to it, 0. My stomach twisted. Was this some kind of countdown? A list of heirs before me? If so, what happened to the others? The answer came that night. As the sun slipped behind the horizon, the Rolex pulsed faintly on my wrist, each tick louder, heavier. Midnight arrived, and with it, a sound that froze my blood. Children laughing. It echoed down the hallway, light and playful, but warped, too slow. Like a recording played at half speed. My chest tightened. I knew there hadn't been children in this house for decades. I crept into the hall, drawn by the sound. The portraits lining the walls seemed to leer at me, their painted eyes glinting with mockery. The laughter grew louder. It came from the nursery. I shouldn't have opened the door. Inside, moonlight spilled across dusty toys and peeling wallpaper. But the rocking horse wasn't broken anymore. It moved steadily back and forth, creaking. In the corner, a music box played by itself, its tinny melody warbling in and out of tune. And then, voices. Thomas, with a Dornever Bose, my name, whispered sweetly, like a parent calling a child in for supper. My throat tightened. My mother had called me that way when I was little. She'd been gone for years, but I would have sworn on my life it was her voice. Come play, Thomas. From the shadows stepped a figure, a child, but not quite right. Its proportions were wrong, its face blurred, like a painting someone had smudged with their fingers. Yet its tone was unmistakable. Why didn't you save me? It asked. I stumbled back, heart hammering. You're not real. The child tilted its head, and suddenly its voice shifted, deeper, male, accusing. You left us to rot. The ledger flashed in my mind. Those names, those numbers. The child's face twisted, melting into another figure. A man, this time, taller, gaunt, with hollow eyes. His lips pulled back into a grin that wasn't human. 3rd night, he rasped. The ledger never lies. The nursery door slammed shut behind me. The rocking horse clattered violently, the music box screeching off-key. Shadows lunged from every corner. I shoved past the figure, clawing the door open with a scream, and bolted into the hallway. My chest burned, my legs barely holding me upright. Behind me, the laughter warped into shrieks. I collapsed against my room's door, dragging the dresser across once more. My whole body trembled as the Rolex ticked twice, then fell still. When dawn came, the nursery was silent. No toys moved, no music played. But on the rocking horse lay the ledger, open to the final page. Next to my name, the number had changed. 3. By the 4th day, I was running on fumes. My reflection in the cracked mirror showed a pale, hollow-eyed version of myself. The ledger's cruel mark 3 burned in my mind. It wasn't just counting nights, it was counting down. I thought about leaving, about walking straight out the door, 37 million be damned. But when I tried, the gates wouldn't open. Rusted iron bars that had swung wide my first day now held firm, fused as if welded shut. I even tried scaling the wall, only to find the stone slick and crumbling beneath my hands. The house had me, and it wasn't letting go. When the sun dipped, I armed myself with the only weapon I could find, a rusted fire poker from the fireplace. It felt laughably inadequate, but the weight of it gave me courage. Midnight arrived. The Rolex ticked once, glowing faintly, and the house shifted. The floor beneath me groaned like a wounded animal. Dust rained from the ceiling. I stumbled into the hallway, flashlight beam jittering across the walls. Then I heard it. A deep, grinding sound. Stone against stone. The floorboards split apart beneath my feet. I leapt back just in time as a section of the hallway collapsed, revealing a pit yawning into darkness below. A trap. Heart pounding, I scrambled backward, only for the floor to buckle again. This time, I barely caught the edge of the doorframe as boards splintered under me. My legs dangled over nothing, air rushing up cold and damp from the abyss below. I heaved myself up, chest screaming with effort, and rolled into the room. My flashlight flickered, but in that moment of weak light, I saw what waited in the pit. Not emptiness, not stone, bodies, pale, half-rotted, stacked like discarded mannequins. Dozens of them. Their faces blurred, unrecognizable, but their hands reached upward as if still clawing for escape. I gagged, bile burning my throat. My uncle's ledger, the names, the countdowns. These were the ones who hadn't survived. A voice drifted up from the pit, wet and slurred. "Join us." The corpses shifted, their arms writhing. The pit wasn't just filled with bodies, it was alive. I staggered back, slamming the door shut just as a skeletal hand thrust through the gap. Splinters pierced my palms as I shoved the dresser across, pinning it shut. The scratching continued for hours, nails against wood, moans rising like a grotesque choir. The Rolex ticked again, and the voices hushed. By dawn, the pit was gone. The hallway was whole again, as if nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. When I crept back to the ledger, my heart nearly stopped. Next to my name, the number had changed again. 4. The house wasn't just keeping count. It was marking my survival. By the 5th day, I stopped pretending I had control. The house was in charge, and I was a rat in its maze. Sleep had become a luxury I could no longer afford. My eyes burned, my body ached, but my mind refused to shut down. I sat in the study with the ledger open before me, staring at that single number next to my name. 4. How many nights before it reached 30? What happened when it did? Did I win? Or did I simply take my place in the pit? I traced my finger over the older entries. Some had only a 1 or a 2 before they stopped. Others climbed higher. 10. 17. No name had reached 30. None. At dusk, I tried to leave again. Desperation pushed me to tear at the boards on the windows, to scream for help through the iron bars. No one came. Not even an echo answered. It was as though the estate existed outside the world, sealed in its own nightmare. When midnight came, I was already trembling. The Rolex pulsed. Tick. And then, silence. No dragging, no whispers, no breaking glass. The house was utterly still. Then a voice spoke, not from the hallway, not from behind the door, from everywhere, from the walls, the floors, the air itself. "You are stronger than the others." I froze, breath trapped in my throat. "You want the 37 million, but you've begun to wonder, is money worth this?" I forced my voice steady. "What do you want from me?" The voice chuckled, deep and smooth, like oil sliding down glass. "Survival is only half the game. The other half is choice." I gripped the fire poker, though I knew it was useless against a voice. "Choice? You can endure 25 more nights. You might even survive. But why suffer? Why bleed, starve, and scream in the dark, when you can take the fortune now?" My stomach lurched. Now, the chandelier above me swayed gently, though no wind blew. Shadows rippled across the walls, coiling into vague shapes, human but distorted. "Yes. Take the fortune tonight. All 37 million. But the price is simple. A replacement." The ledger on the desk snapped open by itself, its pages fluttering until they stopped on the blank space below my name. "Write another's name," the voice whispered. "Give the house a new heir, someone else to claim the nights. Do this, and you walk free at dawn, rich beyond your dreams." My hand trembled. I thought of people I hated, people who deserved punishment, a boss who ruined lives, a cousin who mocked me for years. My pen hovered, but then I thought of the pit, the bodies, the child in the nursery, the faces blurred and broken. "Don't do it," I whispered to myself. The shadows writhed eagerly, stretching toward me. "You can end this suffering," the voice cooed. "Or you can endure. But remember, each night grows worse. and you are not as strong as you pretend. The Rolex ticked once, loud as a gunshot. When dawn came, the ledger remained blank beneath my name. I hadn't written a soul. But I knew the house wouldn't forgive my refusal. By the 6th day, I couldn't hide the truth from myself anymore. The house wasn't just trying to break me, it was waiting for me to surrender. Every night was a test. Every refusal made it angrier. I had spent the morning staring at the blank space in the ledger, the pen still where I dropped it. I wondered if the others, the names with numbers cut short, had also refused the deal. If that was why they were in the pit. By sundown, dread sat heavy in my gut. I barricaded my room with everything I could. Moved dresser, chair, even the mattress dragged against the door. I clutched the fire poker like it was a sword. Midnight. The Rolex ticked, and the house struck back. The walls shook, rattling the frames and bookshelves. Dust fell from the ceiling in choking clouds. Then came the voices. Not whispers, not laughter. Screams. They were my screams. I froze. The sound came from everywhere, hallways, ceilings, beneath the floorboards. Dozens of versions of my own voice, howling in agony. One begged for mercy. Another sobbed. A third shrieked, until the sound splintered my eardrums. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The screams burrowed into my skull. Then the barricaded door shuddered. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the dresser slid an inch across the floor. Something was outside. The mattress bulged inward, as if a giant hand pressed against it. The springs groaned. Then came the stench. Rot. Sulfur. Coppery blood seeping into the room. My chest seized. The Rolex glowed hot against my wrist, branding my skin. And then I heard my name. Thomas. Not my scream this time. My mother's voice again. Sweet, calm. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to open the door. But the smell, the pressure, the weight pushing harder and harder against the barricade, it was wrong. Thomas. The voice cooed again. It's safe now. You can rest. The dresser screeched another foot across the floor. The fire poker rattled in my grip. No, I shouted, though my voice cracked. You're not her. Silence fell for half a breath. Then the thing laughed. Low, guttural, mocking. The mattress ripped in two. A hand, if it could be called, that thrust through. Black, gnarled, with too many fingers. They curled and snapped like bone twigs, reaching for me. I swung the fire poker with everything I had. It connected with a sickening crunch. The hand shrieked, not the sound of a human, but a shrill metallic screech that rattled the glass in the windows. The hand withdrew. The barricade sagged, the room falling silent again. The Rolex ticked. 1, 2, when dawn came, my barricade was untouched. The mattress whole. The door closed. But my hand still reeked of rot, where I'd struck the thing. And on the floor, near the doorframe, lay a single finger, blackened, twitching. And in the ledger, the number beside my name had shifted again. 6. The 6th night had left me rattled, but part of me thought I'd won something. I'd fought back. I'd hurt whatever lived here. Maybe it meant I could survive. But the house wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. The 7th day crawled by. Every sound set my nerves on fire. The creak of wood, the flutter of moths trapped in the curtains, even the steady tick of the Rolex gnawed at me. I kept telling myself, if I lasted 30 nights, the fortune would be mine. But the ledger haunted me. That empty space beneath my name. The unclaimed line. By sunset, I felt watched from every corner. The house wasn't hiding anymore. I didn't bother with barricades this time. I knew they wouldn't hold. Instead, I gripped the fire poker and waited. Back pressed against the wall. Eyes locked on the door. Midnight. The Rolex ticked. Once. Twice. Then silence. Not the heavy, expectant silence of before. A thin, sharp silence that cut straight through the marrow of my bones. And then I realized, this time, the danger wasn't outside the door. It was already in the room. The air grew sour, thick with the stench of wet earth. The shadows along the far wall rippled and deepened, pulling away like fabric torn from nails. A figure stepped out, tall, thin, wrong. Its body was bent in impossible angles, limbs too long, neck tilted unnaturally. Its face was a blur of pale flesh, shifting constantly, never settling into features I could recognize. But its voice was mine. You can't fight me, Thomas, it said. I am you. My legs shook. I raised the poker anyway. You're not me. It tilted its head, and its blurred face twisted into a grotesque smile. I am what you'll become. Every scream you heard was yours. Every body in the pit wore your name. Do you think anyone ever really survives? I swung. The poker passed through the thing as though it were smoke. It laughed, the sound stabbing through my skull. Strike again, it mocked. You'll only exhaust yourself. I staggered back, chest heaving, sweat pouring down my spine. Then it lunged. Its body blurred, One moment across the room, the next inches from me. Its hand, black, clawed, twitching, slashed across my chest. Pain seared through me, hot and real. Blood bloomed across my shirt. I fell, gasping, clutching the wound. The thing crouched above me, its smile wide enough to split its face. "Write the name," it whispered. "Give me someone else, or I'll carve you into the ledger myself." The Rolex ticked, loud as thunder, and for the first time, I saw fear in its face. It jerked back, hissing, as though the light from the watch seared it. Smoke curled from its blurred skin. It stumbled into the shadows, vanishing, leaving only the stench of rot and my blood soaking the floor. When dawn broke, the wound remained. Real, raw. I dragged myself to the study, clutching my side, and stared at the ledger through blurred vision. The number beside my name had changed again. 7. And below it, where the blank line had been, new letters had appeared, faint but legible. A second name, not written by my hand. When I finally gathered the strength to look again, the letters on the ledger were clearer, burned into the page as though written in fire. The name below mine was one I knew. Eleanor Gray, my mother. I nearly tore the page from the book. My chest tightened, bile rising in my throat. My mother had been gone for over a decade. She had died quietly in her sleep, the doctors said, peacefully. But if her name was in the ledger, had she been part of this too? "No," I whispered. My hand shook as I traced the letters. "No, you can't have her." The house answered with a groan, deep and guttural, like the sound of the ocean pulling at rocks. The chandelier above me rattled, its crystals clinking like cruel laughter. I slammed the ledger shut, refusing to look again. But the damage was done. My thoughts spiraled. Had my uncle drawn her into this? Was her death part of the house's design? Or worse, was she one of the blurred faces I'd seen in the pit? The Rolex ticked. Midnight. The air chilled instantly, frosting the edges of the window panes. My wound throbbed, fresh blood dampening the bandage I'd tied around my chest. I gripped the fire poker tighter, though I already knew it was useless. Then I heard her. "Thomas," her voice. Gentle, soft. The same tone she used when waking me for school as a boy. I shut my eyes, fighting tears. "You're not real. You're not her." But when I opened them, she was standing in the doorway. Her hair was silver now, her face kind, exactly as I remembered it in her last years. She wore the blue dress she'd loved, the one we buried her in. She smiled. "Oh, my sweet boy, you don't have to fight anymore." My heart ached. I wanted to run to her, to bury myself in her arms and let the nightmare end. But the wound across my chest burned hot, reminding me this was no mercy. "You're not her," I forced out. She stepped closer, her smile widening, too wide. The skin around her mouth cracked as the expression stretched unnaturally. "You always were stubborn," she whispered, her voice now layered, echoing, as if 100 mouths spoke at once. "Just write another's name. Give me your cousin, your friend, a stranger, it doesn't matter. I will take them, and you will live." Her hands reached out. At first they looked soft, delicate, but as they neared my face the flesh melted, leaving claws blackened like charred bone. I swung the poker. It passed through her, but the apparition didn't fade this time. Instead, her face twisted, the eyes hollowing into black pits. Her smile split, ear to ear. "You'll be mine, Thomas." Just like she was. The chandelier crashed to the floor between us, shattering, the sparks briefly banishing her form. When the smoke cleared, she was gone. I collapsed to my knees, gasping. My blood dripped onto the ledger where it lay open once more. The number beside my name had changed again. 8. And beneath my mother's name, a faint new line appeared, the ink forming slowly, like veins spreading through paper. This time, the letters spelled a name I had not spoken in years. Daniel, my brother. The name on the page wouldn't stop burning itself into my vision. Daniel Gray, my younger brother, the one who'd cut ties years ago, leaving me to deal with our family's mess alone. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade, but still seeing his name in the ledger twisted my stomach into knots. "No," I whispered, slamming the book shut. "You won't take him. You won't take anyone." But the house already had what it wanted. Midnight, the Rolex ticked, and the world unraveled. The walls of the study groaned and split, plaster crumbling as darkness seeped through the cracks like liquid tar. The air grew heavy, every breath thick as smoke. The chandelier above twisted and warped, bending into jagged iron claws that reached toward me. And then he was there. Daniel. At least, that's what it looked like at first. He stood in the doorway, wearing the same jacket he used to wear in college. His face was pale, eyes hollow but familiar. "Brother," he said, his voice trembling, "you left me. I had no choice but to come here." My throat tightened. "You're not him. He's alive. You're just another trick." But the figure stepped forward, and his voice grew sharper. "Don't you understand? The house chooses. It always chooses. You were never strong enough to carry it. You should have given me the burden. The room convulsed, the floorboards splitting open to reveal the pit again, the writhing mass of bodies clawing at each other, shrieking in voices I recognized. Mine. My mother's. Now Daniel's. The figure lunged at me, its features twisting into that blurred, faceless shape I'd seen before. This time, I didn't back down. I raised the Rolex high, and its ticking thundered in the silence. The glow seared through the shadows, burning the figure's flesh like acid. It screamed not Daniel's voice, but the voice of the house itself, deep and endless. You cannot escape, it roared. The ledger is never empty. The debt is eternal. I drove the fire poker straight into its chest. For once, the steel didn't pass through like smoke. It sank deep, the figure convulsing as black ichor poured out. The ledger burst into flames on the desk, the names burning away letter by letter. My mother's, Daniel's, finally, mine. The pit shrieked and collapsed into itself, the bodies vanishing in a violent rush of wind. And then, silence. The fire poker clattered to the floor. The Rolex ticked once more, softer now, like a heartbeat, finally slowing. When dawn broke, the house was empty, the windows no longer barred, the gates wide open. The ledger lay in ash, and on the desk, untouched by flame, sat a single envelope. Inside was a deed, the estate, 37 million in assets, but no signature, no condition, freedom. I stumbled out into the rising sun, the house shrinking behind me. I had survived 9 nights, but as the gates closed on their own, locking with a hollow clang, one thought chilled me more than any ghost. The Rolex still ticked, and the number it showed now wasn't 9. It was 1. The letter said I'd inherited 42 million, but what caught my breath wasn't the number, it was the condition. I had 30 days to find out how my father really made it, or I'd lose every cent. My name's Richard Cole, 56 years old, and until last week I thought my old man died broke. He'd been a ghost in my life since I was 17, absent, then dead. At least, that's what I believed. Turns out he'd been alive the whole time, living under another name in Houston, building a fortune no one in the family ever knew about. Oil money, the lawyers said. Investments. But when I asked for details, they shuffled papers, avoided my eyes, and slid me that letter. The inheritance came with a riddle. No open checkbook, no trust fund. Just one sentence from his will, written in his own jagged hand. Richard gets it all if he finds the truth. The truth's buried where I buried myself. I stared at those words until they blurred. My brother died years ago. My mother remarried and washed Dad out of her memory. I'd built my own life, modest, predictable, free of the shadow he left. Now suddenly $42 million, and a mystery. That night, in my quiet Dallas house, I poured bourbon and Googled the name my father died under, Samuel Cross. What came up wasn't pretty. Shell companies, land deeds in West Texas, court filings sealed by judges whose names rang faint bells, and one headline from 1987 that made my blood run cold. Local man disappears. After oilfield explosion, suspected fraud tied to Cross Holdings. The man who vanished was my father. I didn't sleep. I kept picturing his face, gruff, weathered, never quite smiling. He hadn't left us for another family. He'd left because of whatever he'd done in Texas oil fields, something he never wanted me or anyone to know. Now, with 42 million hanging in the balance, I had no choice but to chase the trail he buried. And deep down, I knew money that size never came clean. I didn't tell anyone about the inheritance. Not my ex-wife, not my daughter in college, not even the guys I drink beer with on Fridays. 42 million isn't money, it's a storm. The kind that tears roofs off houses and changes how people look at you. Until I understood what I was walking into, silence felt safer. The letter had a second enclosure, a brass hotel key, stamped room 317, the Driscoll, Austin. No note, no explanation, just the key. I drove down 2 days later. Austin was hot, restless, the streets thick with music and tourists. The Driscoll sat grand and haunted on Brazos Street, its walls holding a century of Texas secrets. I checked in under a different name. Old habit, I didn't want anyone knowing I was there. Room 317 smelled of leather and dust. Heavy drapes shut out the sun, and on the desk sat a manila envelope. My heart hammered as I opened it. Inside were photographs, grainy, black and white shots of oil fields, trucks, men in hard hats, and one photo that froze me. My father, younger but unmistakable, standing beside a row of barrels. On the back of the photo, in his hand, just 2 words, the fire. That night, I barely touched the bed. I sat with the photos spread out before me, piecing together a puzzle I didn't understand. At 2 a.m., the phone in the room rang. I jumped, staring at it until the second ring. I picked up a man's voice, calm, deep. "Richard, took you long enough. My throat tightened. Who is this? You don't know me. But I knew your father. We all did. You're not the first to look for the truth. A pause, like a smile pressed against the line. Meet me at the old cross site, tomorrow at dawn. Alone. If you want the money, you'll want the truth. And if you want the truth, be ready to bleed for it. The line clicked, dead. I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand, the silence thicker than ever. $42 million suddenly felt like the cheapest part of the deal. I left the Driscoll before sunrise, the brass key still in my pocket like a talisman. The streets were quiet, empty, except for delivery trucks and a few joggers. I kept expecting someone to follow me, but the shadows stayed still. The cross site was 2 hours west, near Midland. I drove fast, the highway stretching endless under a pink Texas dawn. I hadn't been out that way in decades, not since my father was still in our lives. Oil country. Dry, flat, littered with pump jacks bowing like tired giants. When I pulled up, I knew I was in the right place. A chain-link fence sagged around the perimeter, keep-out signs hanging in tatters. The ground was scarred black, wide as a football field, like the earth had been burned hollow. My father had stood here once. Maybe he'd vanished here. A lone pickup idled near the gate. A man leaned against it, tall, broad, wearing a hat pulled low. He didn't wave, just watched me with that stillness you only see in men who know how to wait. "You're Richard," he said as I approached. His voice matched the one on the phone. "Name's Carter. I worked with your dad." "Worked?" My throat was dry. "Or buried him?" Carter didn't flinch. "Depends how you define buried. He walked away from this place, but the fire never did." He pointed toward the scorched pit beyond the fence. "That blaze ran for 3 days. Took men with it. Insurance paid out. More than they should have. That's how Cross Holdings was born." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're saying the money was blood money," he said flat. 42 million built on lies, fraud, and men who burned alive. Your old man ran before they could pin it on him. Changed his name. Kept building. But the debt never left." I swallowed hard. "And now it's mine?" Carter's pale eyes fixed on me. "If you want the fortune, you inherit the ghosts. And some of them," he said, nodding toward the blackened earth, "aren't done screaming." A hot wind swept across the pit, carrying the faintest smell of smoke. And for just a second, I swore I heard voices in it low, angry, and calling my name. I stood at the fence, the scorched earth stretching out like a scar that would never heal. Carter's words rattled inside me. Blood money, ghosts, screaming. It all sounded like a campfire story, except the man telling it wasn't smiling. He lit a cigarette, the flame flickering against the wind. "Your father thought he could outrun this. Change his name, stack his millions, vanish into Houston high-rises. But fire like that doesn't stay buried. It spreads. Now it's your turn in the blaze." It's not had phrase. I forced myself to ask, "Why are you here? What do you want from me?" Carter exhaled, smoke slow. "What I want don't matter. What matters is the men who still want. They've been waiting since '87. They know your daddy's gone, and they know you've got his key." I stiffened. "Key?" He nodded at my pocket. "Brass. Driscoll. He left it for you." The weight of it burned suddenly heavier against my thigh. "What's it open?" Carter's eyes narrowed. "Not a hotel room. That was just the handoff. What you've got is the only key to the lockbox. Your father's lockbox. Safety deposit. Downtown Houston. Everything he kept. Hidden papers. Ledgers. Maybe more. You want answers? That's where they live." I should have felt relief finally. Something concrete. Instead, dread clawed at me. "And the others?" Carter flicked ash into the dirt. "They'll know you're coming. They've been circling for decades. Men don't forget when money and blood run together." The ground seemed to shift under my boots. The pit shimmered in the heat, and for an instant, God help me, I saw shapes in it. Figures, half-formed, arms raised, mouths open in silent screams. I blinked, and they were gone. Carter crushed his cigarette under his heel. "You got 30 days. Find the truth, or lose it all. But be warned, Richard, sometimes the truth costs more than the lie ever did." He climbed into his truck, left me there with the smoke and silence. And I knew then, $42 million wasn't an inheritance. It was bait. I drove back toward Houston, with the brass key heavy in my pocket. Like it wanted out. Like it wanted to drag me straight to whatever my father had hidden. The highway shimmered in the heat, pump jacks nodding their iron heads as if they knew what was coming. By the time I hit the city, the sun was bleeding orange across the skyline. Houston felt louder, faster, meaner than I remembered. Skyscrapers of glass and steel rose where I used to see open lots. I parked 2 blocks from the bank Carter had mentioned, an old granite building that looked out of place among the new towers. Inside, the air was cool, sterile. I walked to the counter, palms sweating. "I need access to a safety deposit box. Name's Samuel Cross." The clerk frowned, checked her screen, then asked for ID. My hands shook as I slid her the documents the lawyer had given me. She studied them, then the key, then me. Finally, she nodded and led me into the vault. The door shut behind us with a thud that echoed through my chest. Rows of boxes stretched in every direction, steel gleaming under fluorescent light. She pointed me to a private booth, set the box on the table, and left me alone. I slid the brass key into the lock. It turned with a reluctant click. Inside was no jewelry, no cash, just papers. Dozens of them, bound in folders. I pulled the first one free. Blueprints, oil field schematics, company seals. The next ledgers, numbers scrawled in my father's jagged hand. Amounts, dates, names, payouts that didn't add up. And then photos. Not the kind I'd found at the Driscoll. These were worse. Men burned, faces charred, oil rigs collapsed, bodies covered with tarps. On the back of each photo, initials. C, T, J, H, M. Dead men catalogued like entries in a book. My stomach turned. This wasn't inheritance. It was evidence. The last folder was thinner. Just one letter inside, addressed in my father's hand. To Richard. I unfolded it, and my throat closed. Son, if you're reading this, they'll come for you too. What I stole, I left for you. What I owe, you'll have to pay. The vault lights flickered, and behind me, the heavy door slammed shut. The sound of that vault door slamming echoed like a gunshot. I spun, heart pounding, but the handle was already locked from the outside. Hello? My voice cracked in the silence. Hey, open up! No answer. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the pounding of my own pulse. I forced myself back to the table, staring at the piles of paper. $42 million. Oil fields. Dead men. Debts. And a letter that made my father sound less like a criminal and more like a man trying to pass the noose from his own neck to mine. I read the rest of the note, the words jagged, scrawled like he'd been writing with a shaking hand. It isn't all in the box. Some of it I kept hidden where the fire started. If you want to keep the money, you'll need to finish what I never could. But know this, Richard, truth isn't free. The men who survived will want their due. The lights flickered again. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, outside the vault door. My chest tightened. I shoved the folders back inside, grabbed the letter, and clutched the brass key like it might help me. The footsteps stopped. Metal scraped against metal. A second key sliding into the lock. The door opened an inch. A shadow fell across the threshold. A man stepped in tall, late 50s, hair silver at the temples, suit too sharp for this place. He smiled, as if we were old friends. Richard Cole, he said smoothly. Or should I call you Richard Cross now? Doesn't matter. You and I need a conversation. I swallowed hard. Who the hell are you? He closed the door behind him with a soft click. Name's Halvorsen. I was your father's partner. At least, until the fire. His eyes flicked to the box. I see you've been reading our history. I tightened my grip on the letter. He called it theft, blood money. Halvorsen chuckled low. Your father always had a flair for guilt. Me? I just call it business. And now, son, business belongs to you. He stepped closer, voice softening to a threat. And you're going to finish what he started. Or 42 million won't be enough to bury you. Halvorsen's eyes were pale, sharp, the kind that had seen men burn and never blinked. He leaned against the steel wall, casual as a man waiting for his drink. You've got something I need, Richard. That letter, the ledgers, proof that ties my name to this mess. Your father was sloppy, sentimental even. But you, his smile sharpened. You're practical. I think we can work together. My hands trembled around the paper. Work together? You torched oil fields, killed men, and built an empire on their bones. Halvorsen didn't flinch. And your father cashed every check, spent every dollar. Don't play the righteous son now. 42 million is already in your blood. My stomach turned. But he wasn't wrong. By law, the money was mine. By blood, so were the ghosts. What do you want? I asked. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. There's a final file missing. Your father kept it out of this box, hid it somewhere near the cross site. It holds names, politicians, bankers, men bigger than me, men who still expect their cut. Without it, none of us are safe. With it, his grin widened. We own the board. I shook my head. And if I don't find it? Halvorsen's eyes hardened. Then you inherit the debt, not the fortune. Those men will come knocking. Trust me, they don't knock twice. The vault air felt thin, metallic. My father's words echoed in my head. What I stole, I left for you. What I owe, you'll have to pay. I slid the letter into my pocket. If I do this, it's on my terms, not yours. Halvorsen chuckled, as if amused by a child pretending to be grown. You'll learn, Richard. In this game, terms are illusions. All that matters is who has the last page of the book. He opened the vault door, gestured for me to follow. 30 days. Find it, or you'll end up buried in the same dirt your father ran from. I walked past him, the brass key heavy in my pocket, my father's words burning in my mind. For the first time, I realized the truth. $42 million wasn't freedom. It was a countdown. I drove aimlessly after leaving the bank, neon bleeding into the windshield. Halvorsen's words replaying in my skull like a loop I couldn't shut off. 30 days. Find it, or you'll end up buried. The brass key lay on the passenger seat, gleaming in the dark like it was laughing at me. Beside it, my father's letter. I'd read the line a dozen times, but it cut deeper each time. Some of it I kept hidden where the fire started. And present, the cross site. The pit Carter showed me. That was where the missing file waited, or where men like Halvorsen believed it did. I should have gone straight home, locked the door, burned everything. Instead, I pulled into a bar off I-10, the kind of place with flickering neon and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 90s. I needed noise, bourbon, and time to think. Halfway through my second glass, a woman slid onto the stool beside me. Mid-40s, dark hair cut sharp, eyes that didn't belong in a roadside bar. She ordered tequila neat, knocked it back without blinking, then turned toward me with a smile that wasn't friendly. "You're Richard." I stiffened. "Do I know you?" "No. But I knew your father." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "He wasn't the kind of man who left anything clean. Whatever he promised you, it's dirtier than you can imagine." I studied her face. Calm, confident. She didn't look like Halvorsen's people, but she wasn't here by accident. "Who are you?" I asked. She tapped her empty glass, signaled for another. "Call me Evelyn. Your dad trusted me once. Enough to tell me where he buried his sins. You think that pit in Midland holds answers? You're half right. But he didn't leave everything there." I frowned. "Then where?" She smiled. "Slow and dangerous. In people. Men who are still alive. Men who want what you've inherited. They'll bleed you dry if you let them." Her drink arrived. She raised it in a mock toast. "Here's your choice, Richard. Find the file before Halvorsen does, or watch your 42 million turn into a death sentence." "A dude." She tossed back the tequila, set the glass down hard, and slid a folded map across the bar. I unfolded the map under the dim bar light. It was old, creased, stained, the edges yellowed. Midland and the cross site were marked in red ink, circled twice. But there were other marks too, tiny X's scattered across Texas like scars. "What are these?" I asked. Evelyn leaned back, eyes sharp over the rim of her glass. "Safe houses, drop points, places your father used when he stopped being Samuel Cole and became Samuel Cross. Every X is a piece of the truth. The one you need." She tapped a spot near Abilene. "That's where he kept the file." "Why tell me?" "Because Halvorsen thinks he owns you. He doesn't. I want you to finish what your father couldn't, drag this whole rotten empire into the light." Her smile was quick and bitter. "And because if you don't, we all drown." I slid the map into my jacket, my pulse hammering. "What's in that file?" Her gaze flicked toward the door, scanning shadows like she expected someone to step out of them. "Names, not just Halvorsen. Judges, senators, men who've been cashing checks since before you were born. If it surfaces, it doesn't just burn them. It burns Texas." The bar door creaked open, a gust of night air, two men in dark coats stepping inside. They scanned the room with predator patience. Evelyn whispered, "Too late. He sent them." She stood fast, her hand brushing mine. "Get out. Take the map. Don't stop until you reach Abilene." The men spotted us. One moved toward the jukebox, pretending to pick a song. The other leaned on the bar, 2 stools down, ordering whiskey, eyes never leaving me. I threw a crumpled bill on the counter, heart pounding. Evelyn's voice was steel. "Go. I'll slow them down." I wanted to argue, but her look stopped me cold. I walked out into the humid night, map burning against my chest, and the brass key heavy in my pocket. Behind me, through the bar's cracked door, I heard the jukebox spark to life. Then the unmistakable crack of glass shattering, followed by shouting. Evelyn had bought me minutes, maybe hours, but not days. I drove west through the night, headlights cutting a thin path across the black Texas plains. The map Evelyn gave me sat unfolded on the passenger seat, trembling with every bump in the road. My father's red X near Abilene seemed to glow in the dashboard light, pulling me toward it like gravity. I kept checking the rearview mirror. Nothing but empty highway, but I knew better. Men like Halvorsen didn't just send a pair of heavies to a bar and call it done. They'd keep coming. By dawn, I reached the edge of Abilene dusty streets, faded billboards, the smell of oil and cattle heavy in the air. According to the map, the X marked an old storage yard near the rail line, the kind of place no one noticed until they needed it. The gate hung broken, chain link curling like paper. I parked inside, heart hammering, and followed the map's lines to a rusted warehouse. The door groaned open, echoing through the empty space. Inside, rows of metal lockers stretched into the dark, some open, some locked, most forgotten. I walked slow, the brass key in my pocket, growing warmer with every step, until I saw it. Locker 117. Faded paint, dented door, but intact. The key slid in smooth. For a second, I hesitated, my father's words echoing. "What I owe, you'll have to pay." I turned it. The lock clicked. Inside was a battered briefcase, leather cracked, straps buckled tight. I lifted it out, the weight surprising me. Heavy as stone, heavy as truth. A sound behind me, made my stomach drop. Boots on concrete? I spun. Halvorsen stood in the doorway, flanked by two men, the barroom shadows come to life. His smile was calm, steady. Told you, Richard. You don't write the terms, you just turn the pages. He nodded at the briefcase. Hand it over, and maybe you live long enough to spend your inheritance. The brass key burned in my hand, the briefcase pulling at my arm. $42 million, or the truth. And suddenly, I wasn't sure they were different things. The warehouse air was thick with dust and silence, broken only by the slow scrape of Halvorsen's boots as he stepped closer. His men flanked him, hands hovering near their jackets, where I knew pistols waited. I tightened my grip on the briefcase. My pulse hammered, my father's warning echoing in my skull. What I stole, I left for you. What I owe, you'll have to pay. Open it, Halvorsen said, his tone almost casual, like a man asking for a light. Right here. Let's all see what Daddy Cross was so afraid of. Every nerve in me screamed not to, but if I didn't, they'd take it anyway. Slowly, I set the case on a metal locker, fingers fumbling with the straps. The latches snapped open with sharp clicks that echoed through the warehouse. Inside were files, thick, yellowed folders bound with twine, names written in my father's hand across the cover: senators, oil barons, bankers, even a governor. Each folder swollen with ledgers, receipts, photos, proof of a conspiracy that spanned decades. Halvorsen's eyes gleamed like a wolf's. There it is. The fire. You think 42 million makes a man rich? This, he tapped the nearest folder with one finger, this makes a man untouchable. I slammed the case shut, my voice shaking. This is evidence. This could bury all of you. His grin widened. Or crown us kings. His men moved forward. Reflex took over. I snatched the briefcase, clutching it tight, backing toward the far wall. My breath came fast, sharp. I had no weapon, no plan. Just paper that could topple empires. Halvorsen's voice was calm, almost kind. Don't be your father, Richard. He thought he could run with it. Thought guilt was heavier than money. Look where it left him, dead in Houston. A coward's grave. Don't make the same mistake. The steel wall pressed cold against my back. The briefcase weighed more with every heartbeat. And then, from outside the warehouse, a voice rang out, steady, female, familiar. Richard, down. Evelyn. The window shattered, as gunfire ripped through the air. Glass exploded inward, raining shards across the concrete. I dropped flat, clutching the briefcase to my chest. Halvorsen's men spun, guns flashing in the half-light, shouting curses as bullets tore through the warehouse. Evelyn moved like she'd done this 100 times, from the shadows of the rail yard. Her pistol barked sharp, controlled. One of Halvorsen's heavies went down hard. A cry cut short. The other ducked behind a row of lockers, firing blind. Halvorsen didn't flinch. He just stepped back into the doorway, calm as if he'd been expecting this. Still alive, Evelyn, he called out, voice smooth. You've got a bad habit of chasing ghosts. Better than becoming one, she shot back. Another crack of her gun. Another burst of sparks from steel. I crawled behind a row of lockers, the briefcase dragging at my arm, breath ragged. Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. Richard, get out, the back door. But Halvorsen's men were already shifting, blocking the exit. Bullets shrieked overhead, chewing into rusted metal. I hugged the floor, every nerve screaming. Then Evelyn's hand grabbed my shoulder, yanking me to my feet. She'd slipped inside, eyes blazing, jaw set tight. Move! We sprinted down a narrow aisle, lockers rattling as shots chased us. At the far end, Evelyn kicked open a rusted service door. Night air and the stink of oil fields rushed in. Halvorsen's voice followed, calm as ever. Run all you like, Richard. Every mile just brings you closer to me. Evelyn shoved me through the door, slammed it shut, and we tumbled into the dark rail yard. She didn't stop moving, dragging me toward her truck parked under a dead streetlight. Inside, we hit the road fast, tires spitting gravel. My hands were locked around the briefcase, knuckles white. Evelyn drove like the devil was behind us, because he was. Finally, breathless, I choked out, Why are you helping me? Her eyes stayed on the road. Because your father wasn't lying, Richard. That file isn't just blackmail. It's a kill list. Men died to keep it hidden. And if Halvorsen gets it, she slammed the wheel hard, swerving off the road as headlights flared in the rearview. A black SUV was closing fast. Then your inheritance becomes a war. The SUV barreled closer, headlights glaring in the mirror like twin suns. Evelyn floored the gas, the truck roaring as we tore down the empty highway. Wind screamed through the cracked windows, drowning my heartbeat. Glove box, she barked. I yanked it open. Inside a pistol, loaded. My stomach twisted, but I grabbed it, the weight cold and foreign in my hand. Keep them busy, Evelyn growled, swerving hard as the SUV drew alongside. The passenger window rolled down. A man leaned out, gun in hand, muzzle flashing. Bullets punched holes through the truck bed, glass shattering behind us. I ducked low, adrenaline flooding every vein. Shoot, Richard, Evelyn shouted. I raised the pistol, hands trembling, and fired. The The shot went wild, sparks spitting off asphalt. The SUV swerved, but didn't fall back. Evelyn jerked the wheel, ramming us into them. Metal screamed as the vehicle scraped. I fired again, closer this time. The gunman ducked back inside, buying us seconds. Good, Evelyn muttered, jaw tight. Now hang on. She swerved off the highway onto a dirt road, the truck bouncing hard, dust choking the air. The SUV followed, relentless. My teeth rattled with every bump, but Evelyn's grip never wavered. Where are we going? I yelled. She didn't look at me. A place your father trusted, one of the last X's on that map. The SUV closed again, its bumper slamming into us, jolting the truck sideways. I nearly lost the briefcase, clutching it to my chest, like it was the only thing keeping me alive. Evelyn cursed, yanked the wheel, and we fishtailed toward a cluster of derelict oil rigs silhouetted against the night. Rusted giants, arms frozen mid-bow. Perfect, she hissed. The SUV surged beside us for one final push. Evelyn braked hard, spun the wheel, and we skidded sideways into the skeleton yard of pump jacks. The SUV overshot, slamming into an old rig with a crunch of steel and glass. Flames sparked, licking the night. Breathless, I lowered the pistol. My hand shook so bad I nearly dropped it. Evelyn slowed, weaving us between the rusted towers, finally coasting to a stop. Dust settled heavy around us. She turned to me, eyes fierce. Now do you understand? This isn't inheritance, Richard. It's survival. I hugged the briefcase, heart still racing. Then tell me what's in it, all of it. Evelyn looked away, jaw tight. Enough to end Halvorson, and enough to destroy you, if you're not careful. We sat in the dark among the rusted oil rigs, the engine ticking as it cooled. The smell of gasoline and dust, heavy in the air. My hands ached from gripping the briefcase too long. Evelyn leaned back in her seat, eyes scanning the horizon, as if expecting Halvorson himself to rise out of the dirt. Open it, I said. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I've been running with this thing pressed to my chest like it's a lifeline, and all it feels like is a coffin. Show me what's inside. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. But once you see, you can't unsee. Understand that, Richard. Your father kept it locked, because the truth isn't a gift. It's a curse. I snapped the latches, my stomach knotted tight. The folders I'd seen in Abilene were only the start. Beneath them lay more audio cassettes labeled with dates, reels of microfilm, and photographs so clear and damning I almost dropped them. Politicians shaking hands with oil barons, envelopes passed, signatures inked under dim lights, and in the center a leather-bound journal, worn, the spine nearly cracked. My father's handwriting scrawled across the first page. This is the record of Cross Holdings. Every deal, every name, every debt. If I'm gone, Richard, it falls to you. Decide if it lives or dies. I flipped through pages, numbers, coded messages, initials tied to millions in payouts. At the back, a list written clean and stark. 23 names. Men alive. Men powerful. Each name underlined, with one word beside it. Paid. Evelyn's voice was low, almost reverent. That list is the kill switch. Anyone holding it owns Texas. Owns more than Texas. I stared at her. So Halvorson doesn't just want the money. He wants this. Leverage. She nodded. And if he gets it, you'll be his first signature on the next page. The night air pressed heavy. I slammed the briefcase shut, pulse hammering. Then we burn it. Evelyn's eyes flashed. You could. Or you could use it. Become what your father never dared to be. From the distance came the faint wail of sirens. Getting closer, I tightened my grip on the case. My father's words seared in my head. What I owe, you'll have to pay. And I realized burning it wouldn't erase the debt. It would only set me free long enough for someone else to collect it. The sirens grew louder, bouncing off the rusted skeletons of the pump jacks. Red and blue light flickered on the horizon, chasing shadows across the dirt. Evelyn killed the truck's headlights, her face lit only by the dashboard glow. They're coming for the case, she said. Halvorson won't risk another ambush. This time it's official. Bought cops, maybe feds, doesn't matter. They'll take it, kill us, and rewrite the story before sunrise. My pulse hammered. I hugged the briefcase, feeling its weight like chains on my chest. So what do? Run forever? That's not inheritance, it's a sentence. Evelyn leaned close, her eyes sharp, urgent. Your father gave you a choice. Pay the debt or spend the rest of your life hunted. But here's the truth, Richard. This case doesn't just buy safety. It buys power. Enough to stand toe-to-toe with men like Halvorson. Enough to decide whose names matter. The sirens wailed closer now. Dust clouds rose on the horizon, convoys of headlights cutting across the flatland. I opened the briefcase one last time. The files glowed in the flashing red and blue, names and faces staring back like ghosts. My father's journal sat on top, one page marked by his handwriting, shaky but clear. Richard, whatever you choose it fast. Men die slow, but truth dies quicker. My throat tightened. I looked at Evelyn. If I burn it, Halvorson comes anyway. She nodded. And if you keep it? I swallowed hard. Then I become him. For a heartbeat. Silence pressed down, heavier than the sirens. Evelyn's hand rested lightly on the wheel, her eyes fixed on me, waiting. I closed the case, the latches snapping shut like gunshots. My decision burned in my chest, hotter than the debt, hotter than the fear. The convoy roared closer, engines rumbling like thunder rolling over the plains. And as I gripped the handle, I realized the truth about $42 million. It wasn't money, it was a throne. And thrones are built on bones. 14 million. David Bowie. And a locked door in a Manhattan loft. That's what my aunt left behind when she died. Not love letters, not family heirlooms, just money, mystery, and one impossible promise. The lawyers told me it was an unconventional bequest. That was their polite way of saying, we don't know what the hell your aunt was thinking. The will was short, brutally so. The loft, the contents, and all associated debts are Thomas's if he stays inside for 30 nights and opens the door at the end of the hall on the final night. If he leaves early, it reverts to the foundation. That was it. No explanation. No guidance. Just a name scratched at the bottom like an afterthought. David Bowie. I laughed when I first saw it. Some prank. A lawyer with a sense of humor. My aunt had been an art world eccentric. She'd collected weird sculptures, performance pieces, things nobody else wanted. Maybe Bowie was just another artifact in her eccentric orbit. But the lawyer didn't laugh. His eyes slid sideways when I asked questions. We can't comment on external references, he said, his voice brittle. The loft itself was worse. Dust hung in the air like it had been waiting decades just to choke me. The furniture was draped in yellowed sheets. And at the end of the long, narrow hall, a steel door, industrial, the kind you'd expect in a bank vault, not a Soho apartment. A single brass key hung from a hook in the kitchen. I should have left. Signed the papers, sold the place, walked away with the cash. $14 million could solve a lot of problems. But the will was clear. No. 30 nights, no money. The first night I unrolled a sleeping bag in the living room and listened to the building creak. Around midnight, a hum drifted through the floorboards, low, melodic, like the start of a song. It wasn't coming from the neighbors. It was coming from inside the loft. I told myself it was plumbing. Old pipes. New York has plenty of ghosts made of bad construction. But when the hum shifted into words, actual lyrics, I sat upright so fast my neck popped. We can be heroes. Just for one day. My blood went cold. That wasn't the radio. I hadn't turned on anything. I stood in the hall staring at the steel door. The voice came from behind it. Bowie's voice. Ragged but unmistakable. Then the sound cut off. Silence, thick and smug, filled the space. The doorknob was warm when I touched it. That's when I realized. My aunt hadn't left me a home. She'd left me a trap. And Bowie's voice, real or recorded, was the bait. The second night was worse. By then, I'd convinced myself that the voice I'd heard was a trick of exhaustion, a brain misfire from too much legal jargon and stale air. But as soon as the sun fell behind the brick warehouses across the street, the loft seemed to change. The silence wasn't empty, it listened. Every creak of my chair echoed too long, like the sound was being stretched by something unseen. The refrigerator motor rattled once, then stopped dead, leaving the air too still, too sharp. And somewhere beneath it all, faint as a heartbeat in the walls, came that same hum. Not lyrics this time, just the thrum of a note held too long. I didn't sleep. Instead, I dug through my aunt's things, searching for answers. Most of the boxes were labeled in her tiny, spidery handwriting. Berlin, 1977, Brixton, Starman Sessions. Some contained yellowed photographs, smoky bars, people in costumes, strangers smiling, with the mania of a different era. And in half a dozen pictures, always at the edge, almost hiding, David Bowie. My aunt was no casual fan. She'd known him. On the third night, the first knock came. I was half asleep in the armchair, nerves shredded, when 3 short raps echoed from the door at the bottom of the stairwell. Not the steel vault door, this was the apartment entrance. When I opened it, a woman in a sharp gray coat stood in the hallway, mid-40s, hair tied back, eyes sharp as scalpels. "Thomas Cole?" she asked. "Yes." She extended a card. "Evelyn Granger, collector. No company name, just a number." "I'm here about your aunt's estate," she said, her voice flat, British. "There are items in the loft that don't belong to your family. They belong to the world. I'd like to arrange their transfer." I didn't invite her in. Something in her tone was too rehearsed. "You mean the art?" Her eyes flicked past me, toward the hallway, as if she could see the steel door from here, among other things. I shook my head. "The will says 30 nights. No transfers until then." Her smile was thin, practiced. "Of course. But you should know, you're not the only one watching that door." Before I could answer, she turned and walked away, heels sharp against the cracked tile. I shut the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. The loft groaned around me, almost pleased. By the 5th night, the hum had grown bolder. It chased me from room to room, blooming out of vents, radiators, even light bulbs. Sometimes it almost shaped words, syllables curling like smoke. "Thomas." I stopped breathing the first time I heard my name. "Bowie," I whispered before I could stop myself. The hum sharpened, like feedback from a guitar amp. Then, faint and low, "Don't trust them." I stumbled back into the living room, tripping over a box. Inside, scattered across old newspapers, lay letters addressed to my aunt, dozens, all signed with the same scrawled lightning bolt. Somewhere behind the steel door, a key turned. The doorknob trembled. I wasn't alone in the loft anymore. On the 7th night, the loft stopped pretending. I'd tried to settle into a rhythm, wake late, survive on takeout, avoid the steel door. But sleep came ragged, fractured by whispers bleeding through the walls. Sometimes they sang, sometimes they warned, and sometimes they argued. 2 voices, distorted, clashing like echoes from opposite ends of a tunnel. One was Bowie's, unmistakable even when fractured. The other was deeper, oil-slick, a voice that didn't belong in this world. That night, I woke to the sound of glass breaking. The kitchen window shattered. Shards glittered on the counter like ice. And standing just inside the frame, brushing dust off his velvet jacket, was a man I'd never seen before. "Thomas Cole," he said, as if confirming a rumor. He was tall, silver hair slicked back, cheekbones cut from marble. His jacket was dark blue velvet, embroidered faintly with stars. Rings glinted on his fingers as he stepped across the broken glass like it was nothing. "Who the hell are you?" My voice cracked. "Lucien Brand," he said smoothly. "Your aunt and I had an arrangement." I backed toward the hall. "Get out." He smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "I will, once you hand me what she promised." "I don't know what you're talking about." He laughed once, soft, like a teacher humoring a slow student. "The door, Thomas. What's behind it? You've heard it, haven't you?" His voice. Every hair on my arms rose. "Bowie," I whispered, before I could stop myself. Lucien's smile sharpened. "Ah, so he has spoken." He stepped closer, glass crunching underfoot. "You think you're his chosen? That's cute. But you're just the custodian. The box doesn't open for you." I swallowed. "Then why are you here?" "Because it will open. On the 30th night. And when it does, I'll be here to claim what's mine." He leaned close enough that I smelled smoke and cologne. "If you're still alive, that is." Then he turned and walked back through the broken window, as if the 5-story drop meant nothing. I staggered to the sill, heart hammering. The alley below was empty. No body, no shadow. Just the faint echo of humming louder now, urgent, vibrating through the pipes. "Don't trust him," the voice warned. On the 8th night, Evelyn returned. She knocked politely, but her smile was gone. "You've met Lucien," she said, stepping inside without waiting. "He's dangerous. If you keep playing custodian, you won't survive 30 nights. Then what do you want? She studied the steel door like it was prey. I want to keep the archive safe. The Foundation exists to stop people like him. Open the door for me, Thomas, and I'll protect you. Her voice was calm, rational. But behind it, the loft hissed. The pipes rattled, the lights flickered, and Bowie's voice slid through the walls like a blade. Don't trust her either. By the 10th night, I understood. The money wasn't the prize. The money was the leash. The real inheritance was behind that steel door. And everyone, collectors, predators, even ghosts, was waiting for me to open it. On the 12th night, the loft finally answered me. The hum had followed me all evening through the kitchen, the bathroom, even when I tried drowning it out with headphones. At midnight, it swelled, vibrating the walls like a struck tuning fork. The steel door trembled. This time, I didn't run. I walked the hall slowly, bare feet on the cold wood, and stopped in front of the vault. The brass knob glowed faintly, as if heat pulsed from within. All right, I whispered. If you're really there, say something. The hum flattened into silence. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the light bulbs in the hall flickered out, one by one. Darkness swallowed me whole. And in the dark, a voice rose. Clear, ragged, familiar. Ground control to Major Tom. I nearly dropped the flashlight. My throat closed. It wasn't a recording. It couldn't be. The words bent, slowed, then twisted into something raw. Not a song, Thomas. Not tonight. I froze. You're real? Silence. Then, closer now. Breath warm against my ear. Real enough. I spun, flashlight beam slashing across empty walls. Nothing there. Nothing but shadows and dust. The loft creaked. A chair slid 6 inches across the floor, with no one touching it. The smell of cigarette smoke curled through the air, sharp and sweet. You knew my aunt, I whispered. She carried me, sheltered me, paid my debts when I was fading. His tone hardened. And now she's gone. So it's you. Me for what? To keep the archive safe. To finish what she started. The steel door rattled hard. Chains inside grinding. Don't open it for them. Not Lucian, not the woman. They'll twist what's inside until it poisons everything. I clutched the flashlight tighter. Then tell me what's behind it. Silence. Then a low laugh, half amused, half bitter. Would you believe me if I said it was me? The floor vibrated. Frames rattled on the walls. A record player in the corner I hadn't touched spun to life, needles screeching over black vinyl. 30 nights, Thomas. Endure. Choose wisely, or the world forgets. The hum rose again, filling my teeth, my skull. Then, as suddenly as it started, the lights blinked back on. I stood alone in the hall, breath shallow, hand damp on the brass knob. The steel door was still locked, but I wasn't sure. I wanted to know what waited behind it anymore. By the morning of the 13th night, I realized something worse. If Bowie's voice could move chairs, rattle doors, and light records, then he wasn't trapped behind the door. He was in the loft with me, watching. By the 15th night, I stopped pretending this was about money. The 14 million was a leash, not a gift. The real inheritance was locked behind that steel door, and I wasn't the only one circling it. The knock came just after midnight, sharp, confident. When I opened the door, Evelyn Granger stood in the hallway, immaculate in her gray coat, hair pinned like a scalpel's edge. Thomas, she said, as if we were colleagues meeting for a late appointment. We need to talk. I didn't move. About the archive? Her smile flickered. About keeping you alive. Men like Lucian don't knock first. They break. They take. And they leave bodies. Let me in, and I'll prove I'm not like him. I hesitated, then the air behind me shifted, cold as breath on the back of my neck. A whisper threaded through the walls. Don't trust her. I flinched. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. He's talking to you, isn't he, Bowie? I froze, Thought so, she murmured. Then let me warn you. That voice will keep you here until you rot. You think he's protecting you? He's using you. Before I could answer, another knock thundered through the loft. Not polite, not patient. The broken window rattled in its frame. Lucien stepped out of the shadows of the stairwell, velvet jacket glinting under the hall light. Thomas, he purred, eyes flicking to Evelyn. You've made new friends. Evelyn's mouth tightened. Stay out of this, Lucien. Out of what? His smile stretched. Cruel. The Foundation's little rescue mission? Don't kid yourself. You don't want to save the archive. You want to own it. Just like me. They stared at each other, the air between them sharp as glass. And I idiot that I was stood between them holding the doorknob like a shield. Lucien leaned closer, his cologne of smoke and cedar curling around me. She'll tell you she's the cure. But the Foundation is just another brand, only dressed in gray instead of velvet. Evelyn's voice sliced through his. We contain things like him, Thomas. Things that can't exist in the world. If you keep playing house with ghosts, you'll be eaten alive. The loft groaned. The lights flickered. And then Bowie's voice cut through the tension, sharper than either of theirs. Both liars. Both thieves. Choose neither. Evelyn's face went pale. Lucien's grin faltered. You hear him too, I whispered. Lucien's eyes gleamed. Oh, I've heard him for years. For a moment, the three of us stood locked in a triangle of silence. Then Evelyn stepped back. 30 nights, Thomas. Don't let it end in blood. She slipped out the door like a shadow. Lucien lingered longer, eyes on me, hand brushing the steel door as if it were skin. 30 nights, he echoed softly. Tick-tock. Then he left, humming one of Bowie's songs under his breath. When the loft fell silent again, I pressed my ear to the steel door. No hum this time, no voice, just a single whisper. So faint, I thought, I imagined it. They'll kill each other for me. Don't let them kill you. By the 18th night, I stopped trusting clocks. The loft had swallowed them. My phone blinked random hours, 2, 14, 6, 47, then back to midnight again. The wall clock above the kitchen ticked backwards until it jammed. Even my watch froze, second hand twitching uselessly. Only the hum kept steady. At first, it was distant, a soft undercurrent. Now it bled through everything. The radiator hissed in key. The fridge motor thrummed in rhythm. Even my own breath fell into tempo, like the loft was conducting me. When I closed my eyes, the hum thickened, shaping into words. Stay. 30 nights. Stay. I jerked awake to find myself standing in the hallway with my hand on the steel knob. No memory of walking there. The brass was warm, almost pulsing. Stop, I whispered. I'm not ready. A low laugh curled through the pipes. On the 19th night, Lucien returned through the front door this time. He carried a bottle of Bordeaux and 2 crystal glasses, like a parody of civility. Thomas, he said smoothly, you look pale, thin. This place is eating you alive. Come drink. I don't drink with intruders, he smirked. Then drink with an ally. He poured anyway, red swirling like blood. 14 million, Thomas. That's nothing compared to what's behind the door. Join me, and you'll have more than money, power, legacy, immortality. I didn't touch the glass. You sound like a cult leader. Lucien's eyes gleamed. Bowie sounded the same, once. That's why people followed him. That's why your aunt did. I felt the loft tighten around us, the air humming louder. The record player spun to life, needle dropping on its own. Bowie's voice crackled, raw and broken. Don't. The wine glass in Lucien's hand shattered, red spilling across the floor. He didn't flinch. He just smiled, wider. See? He whispered. Even dead, he can't stand me. That's why you should choose me instead. He left without another word, shoes leaving red footprints across the wood. On the 20th night, Evelyn called. Not knocked, called. My phone buzzed, her number flashing. You're unraveling, she said before I could speak. Her tone was surgical. I can help you end this without dying in that loft. Why do you care? Because what's behind that door isn't meant for anyone. Not you, not Lucian, not even Bowie. Your aunt tried to protect it. Don't dishonor her. You sound like you knew her better than I did. Silence. Then, I did. Before I could ask what that meant, the line filled with static. Not ordinary static lyrics hidden inside. Faint and furious. Don't trust her. Don't trust anyone. I dropped the phone. The hum swelled, vibrating my teeth, my bones. Frames slid off the walls. A lamp crashed. The loft wasn't just creaking anymore. It was breathing. By the 21st night, I couldn't tell what was real. The voices, the intruders, or my own thoughts. But one thing was clear. The door wanted me, and it was getting hungrier. By the 22nd night, I couldn't resist anymore. The hum had become unbearable. It threaded through my dreams, through the water in the pipes, even through the silence between my own heartbeats. Every whisper from the walls ended the same way. Open it. I told myself I'd just test the key, just to prove it wouldn't work until the 30th night, just to prove I was still in control. The brass key trembled in my hand as I slid it into the lock. It turned. I froze. The will had promised the door would open only at the end, but the mechanism clicked easily, like it had been waiting. I pulled, and the steel groaned, shifting an inch. A flood of icy air spilled out, smelling of dust, ozone, and something sharper like cigarette smoke on a stage. The hum roared, no longer muffled. A dozen voices, layered and warped, chanting in unison. And through it, clear and commanding. Thomas. I pressed the door wider, just enough to glimpse inside. Darkness, deeper than any room should hold. Shapes moved within it, frames, canvases, reels of film stacked like bones. And hanging in the center, suspended by chains of light, was a figure. Thin, sharp-cheeked, hair wild, his eyes opened, glowing pale blue. David Bowie smiled at me. Not a memory, not a recording, something more. Christ. My knees buckled. His voice slid into my head without sound. You shouldn't be here yet. It isn't ready. You aren't ready. I just wanted answers, I whispered. Then listen. What your aunt built. It isn't mine alone. It's every song unsung, every story unfinished. A prison, a sanctuary, a weapon. If you open it fully, the world changes. Forever. The chains of light rattled. The canvases behind him shifted. Faces emerging in the paint. Mouths opening in silent screams. I stumbled back, pulling the door shut. The steel slammed with a force that shook the loft. The key burned my palm. When I looked down, the metal had warped its teeth, twisted into a lightning bolt. On the 23rd night, I tried to convince myself I'd hallucinated, that exhaustion had played tricks. But the key in my hand was no hallucination. Neither was the voice that followed me everywhere now, whispering not from the walls, but from inside my own skull. They'll force you to open it. Lucian, Evelyn, don't let them. Wait for the 30th night. Only then will you understand. In any present. On the 24th night, Lucian returned. This time he didn't ask. He hammered the door with his fist until the hinges screamed. You opened it, he hissed, eyes wild. I felt it. Give me the key. When I refused, his smile cracked into fury. Then I'll tear it from your corpse. The loft answered with a growl, lights exploding overhead. And Bowie's voice, not soft this time, but thunder. Touch him and you die. Lucian staggered back, eyes wide. Before fleeing into the stairwell, I was left alone with the key, the whispers, and the knowledge that I had seen what no one else had, and it had seen me. By the 25th night, the loft had become a fortress, not one of stone or steel, but of whispers, shadows, and eyes I couldn't see but felt everywhere. The hum no longer came from the walls, it came from me, My own bones vibrated with it. And that's when the siege began. It started with Evelyn. She pounded the front door at dawn, her voice cold, clipped, unrelenting. "Thomas, open up. You've gone too far. The Foundation knows you tampered with the lock. You're putting everyone at risk." Her fists rattled the hinges. "Hand me the key. I'll keep you safe. Otherwise, Lucian will cut you open for it." Behind her words, the hum inside me growled. She wants to cage me, like an animal. Don't. I pressed my palms over my ears, but her voice slid through the cracks. "Your aunt trusted me. She gave me this mission before you were even born. She didn't choose you. She settled for you." The loft hissed, lights buzzing. Then, silence. Evelyn was gone. By nightfall, Lucian arrived. No knocking this time, just the shatter of glass as he vaulted through the kitchen window again, boots crunching on shards. His eyes burned with a feverish light. "You opened it further, didn't you? I can feel him bleeding into the world." "I didn't. Don't lie." He grabbed my wrist, squeezing until the key dug into my palm. "Do you know what's behind that door, Thomas? It's not Bowie. It's everything he touched. Every fragment of myth, music, madness, bottled lightning, and I'm the only one who can wield it." The loft shrieked, a sound like metal grinding on bone. The record player spun to life, blasting distorted chords. "He'll hollow you out," Bowie's voice roared. "Leave only ash." The wine bottle Lucian had brought before lifted from the floor and exploded midair, shards slashing his cheek. He staggered back, blood trickling, but he laughed. "Is that all you've got, Ziggy?" he sneered into the air. "A parlor trick?" The loft thundered again, a picture frame flying off the wall to smash against his head. I used the chaos to shove him toward the window. He toppled, barely catching the sill before dropping into the alley. His laughter echoed long after he was gone. By the 26th night I was shaking. Neither of them would stop. And Bowie, if it was Bowie, wasn't helping anymore. His whispers twisted sharper, hungrier. 30 nights, Thomas. Then freedom. Don't fail me. Freedom for who? Him? Or whatever writhed behind that steel door? On the 27th night, Evelyn called again. "You can't last," she said flatly. "If you don't give me the key, I'll bring the Foundation down on that loft. You'll burn with it." Her voice cracked then, softer. "Don't let it end like it did for your aunt." But before I could answer, the hum swallowed her words. "Lies, all of it. She wants to erase me." The walls trembled. The knob of the steel door rattled on its own, chains inside straining. It wasn't waiting anymore. It wanted out. By the 28th night, I knew sleep was finished. The hum never stopped now. It wasn't in the walls anymore, it was in the city. Streetlights outside pulsed in rhythm. The radiator shook with it. My own heartbeat marched to its tempo. And then, just after midnight, the siege became real. The front door cracked open with a single blow. Evelyn stormed in, flanked by 2 men in black coats. Their faces were calm, clinical, eyes dead of hesitation. Each carried a black case shaped exactly like a coffin for instruments. "Thomas," Evelyn barked, "step aside. It ends tonight." The loft howled. Lights exploded overhead, sparks raining down. Bowie's voice cut through the chaos, jagged and furious. "Get them out." The men moved forward anyway, unrolling strange tools. One looked like a tuning fork the size of a rifle, another like a cage of copper wires. "Containment!" Evelyn shouted over the hum. "Don't fight us, we're here to save you." Before I could answer, the kitchen window shattered again. Lucian. He landed like a predator. Velvet jacket torn, eyes fever bright. Blood still streaked his face from the last encounter. "Containment?" he spat, laughing. "You think you can contain art? Genius? Divinity?" He pulled a blade from his coat, curved and shining like obsidian. "No, darling. You harness it. You become it." The Foundation men shifted, their tools humming in answer to the loft's vibration. Evelyn raised her voice above it all. "Thomas, listen to me. That door isn't salvation, it's infection. Once it's open, there's no closing it. Don't let him trick you. Lucian grinned, eyes on me. Don't listen to her, boy. She wants to lock it away forever. But you're holding a god by the leash. Open the door, and the world remembers Bowie as he truly was, eternal. The steel door rattled violently, chains inside snapping like whip cracks. A beam of light speared through the gap where I'd opened it before, cutting across the loft. The hum swelled until my bones screamed. And then he stepped through. Not flesh, not shadow, something between. Bowie's figure, wrapped in threads of light, half music, half memory. His eyes glowed pale blue, his voice both inside and outside my head. Thomas, it's time. The foundation men froze. Lucian dropped to one knee, whispering a prayer. Evelyn went pale. And I, idiot, pawn, heir, stood shaking, the warped key in my hand, while the loft buckled around us. Time for what? I croaked. Bowie's smile was thin, sad, dangerous. For you to choose who gets to live with me, and who dies. The walls split, plaster raining down. The air reeked of ozone and blood. And as the 29th night bled into the 30th, I realized the truth. It wasn't the money, or the will, or even the archive. The real inheritance was him, and everyone in that room wanted to own a piece. By the 30th night, the loft was no longer a loft. The walls had split into chasms of light and shadow. The air vibrated like the inside of an amplifier cranked to the breaking point. Every object, chairs, lamps, shattered bottles, hovered weightless, orbiting the steel door as if caught in a storm. And in the center, Bowie waited. Not a ghost, not a man, a silhouette woven from sound and memory, wrapped in chains of light. His eyes glowed brighter than any bulb in the city. His presence pressed against my chest until every breath hurt. Thomas, he said, voice shaking the floor. It's time to choose. Evelyn stood to my left, her agents pinned back by invisible force, their tools buzzing uselessly. She held her ground, shouting over the storm. Don't listen to him. That thing isn't Bowie, it's a parasite wearing his shape. Lock it away. Give me the key and I'll save you. Lucian staggered forward on my right, bloodied but unbowed. His blade gleamed obsidian in the fractured light. Don't be fooled, boy. He is Bowie. He is divinity, art made flesh. Open the door fully, and together we'll remake the world in his image. We'll be legends. Their voices clashed, tearing through me. And Bowie only smiled. They both want me, one to cage me, one to consume me. But you, Thomas, you can decide. Do I live in chains? Do I burn free? Or do you end me here and now? The key in my hand pulsed, hot as coal. Its teeth had warped fully into a lightning bolt, vibrating like it wanted to leap into the lock. The loft screamed. The steel door blew wide, chains snapping like gunfire. Light flooded the room, paintings, records, reels of film, fragments of lyrics, all spilling out like a tidal wave of memory. Faces swirled in the torrent Ziggy. Thin white Duke, Major Tom shifting masks of Bowie across decades. They circled me, demanding, choose, choose, choose. Evelyn lunged. Give it to me! Lucian roared. No, me! And Bowie's voice cut sharper than both. Choose yourself. I dropped to my knees, clutching the key. My aunt's voice flickered in my memory, faint but steady. You must endure. 30 nights. Then decide. Tears blurred my vision. My voice broke. If I set you free, you'll tear the world apart. Bowie's smile didn't falter. Maybe, or maybe I'll save it. That's the gamble of art, Thomas. Chaos or beauty, death or rebirth. Evelyn screamed. Lucian lunged, and I, heir, fool, custodian, made my choice. The key slid into the lock. The door exploded in light. For one heartbeat, I saw Bowie's eyes blue fire, endless, eternal. Then everything shattered. The loft, the enemies, the chains, even Bowie himself splintering into starlight that streaked into the sky. Silence. When I woke, the loft was empty. No door, no hum, just four bare walls, and the echo of a song I'd never heard before, lingering like smoke. The 14 million sat untouched in my account. But I knew the truth. That wasn't my inheritance. The real inheritance was the silence Bowie left behind, waiting for someone, someday, to strike the first chord again. When I learned I had inherited a ranch worth nearly $10 million, my first thought wasn't excitement. It was dread. The envelope had arrived without warning, thick, cream-colored, sealed with a wax crest I hadn't seen since childhood. My hands shook as I tore it open, not from greed, but from fear. Because I knew who it was from. My father, the man who hadn't spoken to me in almost 15 years. The man who had looked me dead in the eyes on the day I left and said, "You're no son of mine." And yet, in his final will, he left everything, the sprawling ranch, the land, the house, to me. Not to my brother Daniel, who had stayed by his side, slaving away on the property. Not even to my sister Lily, who had tried to be the peacekeeper all these years. To me, the so-called failure, the runaway. At first, I thought it was some cruel joke, that the old man had written it out of spite, knowing it would tear open wounds that never healed. But as I read further, I realized it wasn't that simple. The letter attached to the will was handwritten. His handwriting was sharp, angry strokes, just as I remembered. "Thomas, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. You left when I needed you most. You betrayed this family. But blood cannot be severed. This land is yours now. Not as a gift, but as a weight. Carry it, if you can, or let it break you, as it broke me." My throat closed as I read the words again and again. A mixture of rage and sorrow surged in me. Even in death, he found a way to spit on me. To give me something so massive, it felt less like an inheritance and more like a curse. I stared at the deed, acres upon acres of ranch land, a house older than memory itself, livestock, equipment, everything, more wealth than I'd ever dreamed of. But my father's words hung heavy in the air. Carry it, if you can. The truth was, I didn't know if I could. Still, there was no avoiding it. I had to return. To the home I swore I'd never set foot in again. To the family I'd left behind. To the ghosts of my past, waiting among the dusty fields and weathered fences. And so, with the deed in one hand and the letter in the other, I boarded a plane back to Texas. I told myself it was about responsibility, about reclaiming what was mine. But deep down, I knew the real reason. I needed answers. Why me? Why not Daniel? And what exactly did my father mean when he said the land had broken him? The plane lifted off, the city vanishing beneath me. Ahead lay a ranch, a family divided, and a legacy dripping with both fortune and poison. And I knew one thing for certain. This was not going to be a homecoming. It was going to be a reckoning. The drive from the airport to the ranch felt longer than the flight itself. Texas stretched out endlessly, the highways dissolving into dusty backroads lined with brittle fences and thorny brush. Each mile brought me closer to the land I had sworn never to see again, and my chest tightened with every turn of the wheel. When I finally reached the familiar dirt road, the sight of it nearly made me stop the car. The wooden gate was the same as I remembered, though weather-beaten and leaning. My father's initials were still carved into the top beam, bold and permanent, like a brand burned into the land. The house loomed in the distance, its white paint faded to gray, roof shingles missing, windows like tired eyes. The place looked smaller than I remembered, but heavier somehow, as if it carried every fight, every silence, every wound our family had ever endured. I parked by the barn, dust swirling around the car. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. Then I heard her. "Thomas?" I turned. Lily stood on the porch, framed by the doorway. She was older now. Of course, lines etched around her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy braid, but the warmth in her face was unchanged. For a heartbeat, it felt like no time had passed at all. She hurried down the steps and crossed the yard, pulling me into a hug before I could react. The scent of lavender soap clung to her clothes, the same she'd used as a teenager. "I can't believe you're here," she whispered, her voice thick. I swallowed hard, guilt rising like bile. I didn't think I'd ever come back. She pulled away, studying me with eyes that were both kind and searching. "It's been a long time. Too long," I admitted. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Almost. But then her gaze flicked to the car, to the papers I still clutched. The deed. The will. Her smile faltered. "So it's true," she said quietly. "He left it all to you." The weight of her words pressed down on me. I nodded, unable to speak. Her lips parted, as if to say something more, but she stopped herself. Instead, she motioned toward the house. "Come inside. You must be tired." As we walked, I felt the house watching me. Every step on the porch creaked like a memory. The door groaned as it opened, the air inside thick with dust and something else, something bitter, like smoke that never fully cleared. The living room was a time capsule. Old leather chairs, faded photographs, the fireplace dark with ash. My father's boots still sat by the door, polished and waiting. Lily's voice broke the silence. "Daniel's not here yet. He's not taking this well." My stomach twisted. I didn't need her to explain. I could already imagine my brother's face, the betrayal in his eyes when he realized the ranch, the life he had sacrificed everything for, was now mine. I set the deed on the table, its edges catching the light. The house was mine now, but it already felt less like a gift and more like a fuse waiting to be lit. I heard the engine before I saw the truck. The old Ford roared up the drive, kicking up a storm of dust, and even before the door slammed, I knew it was him. Daniel. He stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, his face shadowed by a sun-bleached cap. Time had carved him rougher, leaner, but his eyes, in those sharp, unyielding eyes, were exactly the same. Eyes that once looked at me with brotherhood. Now, they burned with betrayal. "Well?" he drawled, his voice low, controlled, but shaking with anger. "Look who finally decided to crawl back." I stood, my hands tightening at my sides. "Daniel, don't." He cut me off, slamming the truck door hard enough to rattle the windows. He stalked toward me, boots heavy on the dirt. "You don't get to say my name like nothing's happened. Like you didn't walk out and leave us to rot." His setter, Lily stepped forward quickly, her hands raised. "Denny, please, not like this." But he barely glanced at her. His focus was locked on me, sharp as a knife. "You think you can disappear for 15 years and then just show up because Daddy dangled a deed in front of you?" His jaw clenched, veins standing out along his neck. "This land, this life, I bled for it. I stayed, I worked, while you," his voice cracked, raw, "you abandoned us." Each word hit harder than a fist. I tried to steady myself, but the guilt I'd buried for years rose like a tide. "I didn't abandon you," I said, though even to my own ears it sounded hollow. "I had to leave. You know what he was like." "You left me." His voice thundered now, echoing against the barn walls. He was trembling, his fists clenched tight. Lily slipped between us, her small frame trembling but firm. "Stop it, both of you. He's gone, don't you see? Fighting won't change that." But Daniel's glare only hardened. "He may be gone," he growled, "but he made sure his poison lived on. He gave it all to you, not me. After everything." His eyes glistened, though he refused to let the tears fall. "You don't deserve a damn inch of this land." The silence that followed was suffocating. The only sound was the creak of the porch boards under Lily's shifting weight. Finally, Daniel spat in the dirt, his chest heaving. "This place should have been mine, and I'll be damned if I let you ruin it." He turned on his heel and stormed back to the truck. The door slammed, the engine roared, and he tore down the road, the dust cloud swallowing him whole. Lily's hand trembled as she touched my arm. "He'll calm down," she said softly, though her eyes betrayed doubt. I stood there, staring at the empty road, my heart pounding with anger, shame, and something else I didn't want to admit, fear. Because Daniel wasn't just angry, he was dangerous. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ranch was silent, but not the kind of silence that soothed it. Was the kind that pressed in on you, heavy and watchful. Every creak of the old floorboards, every groan of the wind against the windows, made me wonder if the house itself remembered me. Lily had gone to bed early, worn down by the storm between me and Daniel. I sat alone in the kitchen, nursing a glass of whiskey that tasted more like guilt than comfort. The deed lay on the table, its edges curling under the yellow light. My father's handwriting, those sharp, angry strokes, seemed to stare at me from the letter beside it. "Carry it, if you can." The words cut deeper the longer I looked at them. Finally, I stepped outside, hoping the cool night air would clear my head. The porch boards groaned under my weight, and the sky stretched wide and endless, stars scattered across it like broken glass. For a moment, I almost felt peace. Then I saw the truck. It was parked at the edge of the property, headlights off, engine silent, just sitting there, watching. I froze, my heart thudding. At first, I thought it might be Daniel, sulking in the dark. But no, the shape was wrong. Too new, too polished. A black SUV, windows tinted so dark they swallowed the starlight. I stood there, waiting, but no one got out. No door opened. The engine didn't start. It just sat there, a shadow at the border of the land. Finally, after what felt like hours but could only have been minutes, the SUV rolled backward, slow and smooth, until the night swallowed it whole. I exhaled, realizing only then that I'd been holding my breath. The next morning, over coffee, I mentioned it to Lily. She stiffened, her spoon pausing in the sugar jar. "They've been around," she said quietly. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, they?" She glanced toward the window, as if afraid someone might be listening. "Men from some development company. They've been sniffing around ever since Dad got sick. Said they wanted to buy the ranch. He told them no, over and over again. But they didn't stop." A chill crept up my spine. "And now that he's gone, they'll try again." Her voice cracked. "They don't care about family or history. They see land, acres to pave over. They think money buys everything." I leaned back, the bitter taste of dread mixing with the coffee on my tongue. The SUV, the will, the ranch. Suddenly, it all connected. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about survival. For the first time since I opened that envelope, I understood why my father had written those words. "Carry it, if you can." Because the land wasn't just heavy with memories. It was under siege. By the third day, the tension in the house had become unbearable. Lily tried to keep things civil, but it was like living with a storm always on the horizon. Every slammed door, every heavy silence, felt like a warning of thunder about to break. When Daniel finally returned, I wasn't surprised. I was only surprised it took him that long. He pulled up in his truck without knocking, stomping across the porch like he owned the place, which, in his mind, he probably still believed he did. Lily was the first to meet him at the door. "Danny, please." He brushed past her without a word, his boots tracking dust across the old floor. His eyes found me instantly, cold and sharp. "You planning on staying?" he asked flatly. I set down the ledger I'd been looking at, meeting his stare. "It's my responsibility now." His laugh was short, bitter. "Your responsibility? You don't even know how to work this land. You don't know the first thing about keeping it alive." He wasn't wrong, and that stung more than I wanted to admit. "I can learn," I said. "You don't learn a ranch. You bleed for it." His voice rose, echoing off the walls. "And I've already given enough blood for both of us." Before I could respond, Lily stepped between us again, her face pale with exhaustion. "Stop it, please." This isn't what he would have wanted. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he looked past her, his glare still locked on me. "You don't belong here, Thomas. You never did, and you sure as hell don't now." For a moment, I thought he might swing at me. His fists were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. But instead, he turned abruptly and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "He's not going to let this go." Lily's eyes dropped to the floor. "I'm afraid it's worse than that." When I looked at her, confused, she hesitated, then said quietly, "I saw him talking to some men in town yesterday. The same ones who've been hanging around about the ranch. He didn't see me, but, Thomas, I think he's listening to them." My blood ran cold. Of course Daniel would find the one weapon sharp enough to hurt me. If he couldn't have the land, he'd rather see it destroyed. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the wood. "If he sides with them, then we'll lose everything," Lily finished, her voice trembling. The weight of it all settled heavy in my chest. Family wasn't just tearing us apart from the inside. Now, the vultures circling outside had found their opening, and Daniel was about to hand it to them. 2 days later, they came to the ranch. I was out by the barn, trying to make sense of rusted equipment I barely knew how to use, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. The sound was too smooth, too polished, nothing like Daniel's beat-up truck or the ranch's usual pickups. I turned just as a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop, the same kind I'd seen parked at the edge of the property that night. The driver's door opened first. A tall man stepped out, his suit crisp despite the Texas heat, his sunglasses reflecting the barn, the fields, and me. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not on a ranch road. "Mr. Carter?" he asked, his voice calm, practiced, the kind of tone that could sell lies as easily as promises. I stiffened. "Who's asking?" He smiled faintly, extending a card. "Richard Hale, Hale Development Group. I believe we've been trying to get in touch with your family for some time." I didn't take the card. "You mean harassing? Inter as the crossed with ends." His smile didn't waver. "We prefer persistent interest." Behind him, another man stepped out of the SUV, shorter, stockier, with a stare that lingered too long. Muscle, not business. He said nothing, just crossed his arms and scanned the property like he was already measuring it. Richard tucked the card back into his pocket, unfazed. "I'll get to the point, Mr. Carter. Your father was difficult. He refused to see reason, but times change. And you," he gestured at me lightly, "you seem more practical." "I'm nothing like him," I snapped before I could stop myself. Richard tilted his head as if pleased. "All the better. Then I'll be brief. Hale Development is prepared to offer you $9 million. Cash, immediate transfer." The number hit me like a slap. My throat went dry. 9 million. More than the ranch was even worth on paper. More than I'd ever dreamed of seeing in my lifetime. But then I remembered my father's words, written in that sharp, angry scrawl. Carry it, if you can. And I realized, this was the test. I met Richard's gaze. Not interested. For the first time, his smile faltered. Just a flicker, but enough. I'd encourage you to think carefully, Mr. Carter. Offers like this don't stay on the table forever. He adjusted his cufflinks, nodded slightly, then turned to leave. But before he got back in the SUV, he paused, his voice lower, colder. Your father thought he could resist us. Look where it got him. The words landed heavy, like a stone in my gut. Then he was gone, the SUV rolling down the drive, a cloud of dust trailing behind. I stood there, fists clenched, the echo of his threat hanging in the air. They weren't just making an offer. They were making a promise. That evening, Daniel showed up again. This time, there was no storm of anger in his stride, no wild shouting or clenched fists. He was calm, too calm. And that, more than anything, put me on edge. He walked into the house without knocking, found me at the kitchen table, and dropped a folder onto the wood between us. Take a look, he said flatly. I opened it. Inside were glossy brochures, diagrams, charts filled with bold numbers, and neat bullet points. Hale Development. Their vision for Carter Ranch Estates, rows of identical houses where fields used to be, a man-made lake where the barn stood, and in big bold letters, projected profit, 25 million. I shoved the folder back toward him. What the hell is this? It's the future, Daniel replied, his jaw set. The world's moved on, Thomas. We can't keep pretending this land means something it doesn't. It's dirt, and Hale's willing to pay more for it than it'll ever be worth to us. I stared at him, disbelief mixing with fury. So what? You're working with them now? His eyes didn't waver. I'm not blind. I see the numbers. 9 million. Split between us. Could change everything. You don't get it. You've been gone. You don't know the debts, the droughts, the nights wondering if we'd even keep the lights on. Lily appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Danny, you can't be serious. I'm dead serious, he said, his voice hardening. I gave this place everything. My youth, my back, my future. And for what? For Dad to spit on me in his will and hand it all to him? He jabbed a finger at me. No, if I can't have the ranch, I'll damn well make sure I get something out of it. The words hit like a blade. You'd sell out everything he built? I asked quietly. He built nothing but pain, Daniel snapped. His eyes burned now, raw and unflinching. Don't act like you don't know. You ran because you couldn't stand him. Don't pretend you suddenly care about his legacy. I opened my mouth, but no words came, because part of me knew he was right. But Lily stepped forward, her voice shaking. Danny, if you do this, if you help them, you're not just betraying Dad. You're betraying us, me, Thomas, everything we still have left. For a flicker of a moment, I thought I saw doubt in his eyes, a shadow of the brother I once knew. But then he shook his head, firm and final. This land's a curse. I'm done bleeding for it. If Hale wants it, let them have it. He grabbed the folder, tucked it under his arm, and walked out the door without another word. The sound of his truck faded into the night, leaving the house trembling in silence. Lily's eyes brimmed with tears. Thomas, she whispered, if he's really with them, what are we going to do? I didn't answer, because I already knew. If Daniel had chosen his side, then I was running out of allies, and out of time. The next morning, I woke to the smell of smoke. For one wild second, I thought the house was on fire. I bolted upright, heart hammering, but when I rushed outside, the smoke wasn't coming from the house, it was drifting up from the pasture. The north fence was burning. Flames licked across the dry wood posts, devouring them one by one, while black smoke coiled into the dawn sky. My stomach clenched. That fence stretched for nearly half a mile. If the fire spread to the brush, it could swallow half the ranch. I grabbed a hose and ran, fighting the blaze with water and dirt until my arms screamed. Lily joined me, her face streaked with sweat and ash. We battled the flames until they sputtered out, leaving behind charred posts and a reek of smoke that clung to our lungs. When it was finally over, I dropped to my knees, chest heaving. Lily knelt beside me, tears in her eyes. Thomas, that wasn't an accident. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew. And when I saw the black SUV parked on the road in the distance, just sitting there, I stopped pretending. By the time I made it back to the house, a note was waiting on the porch. No envelope, no signature, just one line, scrawled in block letters. Sell, or watch it all burn. My hands shook as I crumpled the paper. Rage burned hotter than the fire ever could. That evening, Daniel showed up again. This time, he didn't even try to hide where he stood. Bad luck about that fence, he said, leaning against the doorframe like he owned the place. I glared at him. You think this is a joke? His lips curved into a humorless smile. It's not a joke. It's reality. You think you can fight Hale? They've got money, men, lawyers, and if that doesn't work, they've got fire. You can't win, Thomas. Lily's voice cut sharp from the kitchen. And you're helping them, aren't you? Daniel's smile faded, but he didn't deny it. His silence said more than words ever could. I stepped closer, my fists clenched. You'd let them torch the land just to prove a point? His eyes hardened. I'd let them torch you if it meant finally being free of this place. For a moment, everything went still. My own brother, staring at me like I was the enemy. Finally, he shoved past me and left, his truck roaring into the night. I stood there, shaking, the note still in my pocket, the smell of smoke still clinging to my clothes. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was war. 2 nights after the fire, I heard the dogs barking. It wasn't the usual restless yapping. This was deeper, sharper warning barks that made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I grabbed the shotgun my father kept by the door and stepped onto the porch. Moonlight bathed the ranch in silver, and at first I saw nothing. Then movement, shadows slipping between the trees by the barn. 3 of them. My grip tightened. Who's there? Silence. Then a low laugh carried across the night. One of them stepped into the open. It wasn't Richard Hale, but I recognized him from the SUV, the stocky man with the predator's stare. He carried himself like someone who'd broken bones before breakfast. Evening, Carter, he called. Heard you've been playing stubborn. My pulse hammered, but I forced steel into my voice. You're trespassing. You've got 5 seconds to leave. He grinned, slow and mocking, and 2 more figures flanked him. One held a crowbar, the other a chain. You don't get it, the stocky man said. This isn't yours. Never was. Hale's just being polite, giving you a chance to walk away rich. But if you'd rather bleed for this land, his grin widened. We can arrange that. Behind me, the screen door creaked. Lily's voice, trembling. Thomas? Back inside! I barked without turning. The men laughed. Cute. Playing protector. How long you think you can keep that up? A week? A month? Before this place eats you alive? Rage flared hot in my chest, but I kept the barrel steady. Step 1 foot closer, and I swear you won't take another. For a long, tense moment, none of us moved. The night seemed to hold its breath. Then headlights cut through the dark. Daniel's truck. Relief flickered in Lily's voice. He came back! But when Daniel stepped out, that relief curdled. He didn't look at me or her. He walked straight to the stocky man, shook his hand like an old friend. My stomach dropped. You're late, the man said. Daniel shrugged. Family drama, you know how it is. He glanced at me then, and for the first time, I saw no anger, no pain, just cold calculation. This doesn't have to get ugly, Thomas, he said, his voice almost gentle. Sign the papers. Take the money. Let it go. I stared at him. My own brother standing shoulder to shoulder with men who wanted to tear our father's legacy apart. The barrel didn't waver. If you think I'm giving this land to them, you've forgotten who raised us. His jaw tightened. Yeah, I remember who raised us. That's exactly why I want it gone. The standoff stretched, taut as a wire ready to snap. Then the stocky man leaned forward, his grin fading. Last chance, Carter. Sell, or we'll take it piece by piece, starting with the people you love. Behind me, Lily gasped, and in that moment I knew. This wouldn't end with words. The night split open like a wound. I stood on the porch, shotgun steady, 3 of Hale's men in the yard, and Daniel beside them, his face lit cold by the truck's headlights. Lily's breath hitched behind me, but I didn't dare look away. 1 blink, and they'd be inside. The stocky man, their leader, took a step forward. Clock's run out, Carter. Hand it over, or we take it ourselves. Over my dead body, I said. He smirked. That can be arranged. Everything happened at once. One of the men lunged, chain glinting in the moonlight. I fired the blast echoing across the ranch, the man dropping to his knees with a scream. The others charged. Chaos swallowed us. The crowbar swung past my head, splintering the porch rail. I shoved the shotgun forward, slamming the stock into his jaw. He staggered, blood spraying the dirt. Then Daniel was on me. My own brother. His fists were iron. Years of hard work on this land poured into every blow. I hit back, rage and betrayal giving me strength. But every strike cut deeper than any wound. You can't win, he shouted, shoving me against the wall. You never belonged here. Spots swam in my vision. I thought of Dad, of his will, of the weight of this ranch he'd left me with. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I wasn't meant for this. Then I heard Lily scream. She stood in the doorway, one of Hale's men grabbing her arm, dragging her toward the yard. The sight snapped, something inside me. I roared, slamming my forehead into Daniel's, breaking his grip. I swung the shotgun like a club, cracking it across the thug's back until he released her. The leader stepped forward, gun drawn now, his smile gone. Enough. It's over. I pulled Lily behind me, chest heaving, blood hot in my mouth. Then finish it. For a heartbeat, the world held still. His finger curled on the trigger. And then sirens. Red and blue lights tore through the dark, sirens wailing, engines roaring up the drive. Sheriff's cruisers. The thugs froze, their bravado dissolving. The leader cursed under his breath, backing toward the SUV. This isn't done, Carter. Hale always gets what he wants. They piled into the vehicle, tires spitting gravel as they vanished into the night. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of radios and the sheriff barking orders. Daniel stood apart, face twisted in fury and shame, hands clenched like he wanted to fight the world. The deputies closed in, and for a moment I thought he'd run. But then he dropped his head, shoulders sagging, and let them take him. I watched my brother disappear into the back of a cruiser, the flashing lights painting him in red and blue. When it was over, I stood in the yard, smoke from the shotgun still clinging to the night, Lily clutching my arm. The ranch was scarred, broken fences, and blood on the dirt, but it was still standing, and so was I. For the first time, I understood what Dad had meant. The ranch wasn't just land. It was a trial, a fire that either consumed you or forged you stronger. And I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. Not Daniel. Not Hale. Not anyone. My father left me nothing but a watch, a letter, and a key. That's what the lawyer said. No house, no land, no bank account. Just 3 items, wrapped in a plain brown envelope with my name scrawled across the front. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke. My father, Richard, had built a fortune in ways no one ever quite understood. Oil leases, shady land deals, rumors of cartel money. Everyone in town whispered about his empire, and everyone assumed I'd inherit at least a slice of it. Instead, I sat in the lawyer's oak-paneled office, staring at a scratched Rolex Submariner, a brass key with no tag, and a single-page letter that looked like it had been pulled from the 70s. 14 million. 30 nights. Don't trust the brands, and don't open the box until you've earned it. $14 million. My stomach turned over. The lawyer didn't explain, didn't offer more, just shook his head like he wanted me gone. That's all he left. Whatever it means, it's yours to figure out. I slipped the Rolex on my wrist, the brass key into my pocket, and folded the letter with trembling hands. I told myself it was just another of my father's twisted games, the kind he'd played my entire childhood. But I couldn't ignore the number. 14 million. If it was true, it meant more than inheritance. It meant danger. The drive back to the ranch was long and hot. Dust devils chased my car along the empty Texas road. Every mile felt heavier. When I reached the old house, the cicadas were screaming, and the shutters banged against the siding like fists. It looked abandoned, though I knew my father had lived there until his final day. The watch ticked steadily on my wrist as I walked up the creaking porch. Inside, everything smelled of whiskey and tobacco. Dust coated the leather couch, and a line of dead moths lay beneath the window. But what unsettled me most was the silence. My father's house had never been quiet. I found the box the letter mentioned on the mantel. A heavy steel lockbox, scarred and dented, with a keyhole that matched the brass key in my pocket. I held it for a long time, the weight pulling at my arms, the key slick with sweat in my hand. But I didn't open it. Something about the words 30 nights stopped me cold. My father never chose words lightly. If he said 30 nights, he meant it. So I left the box on the mantel. That night, I lay in my old childhood bedroom, staring at the cracked ceiling. The Rolex glowed faintly in the dark. At exactly midnight, its second hand stopped, and the whispers began. Not outside, not in the hall, from inside the house itself. 14 million. 30 nights. The voice was low, broken, like breath over glass. I sat up, every muscle locking tight, the letter burning in my pocket. And then I realized, the voice wasn't my father's. The whispers didn't stop. They slid through the cracks in the walls, curling around my bed frame, brushing my ears like cold fingers. Sometimes they muttered numbers, 14, 14, sometimes names I didn't recognize. By dawn, the second hand on the Rolex ticked forward again, as though nothing had happened. I stumbled into the kitchen, nerves shot, and poured myself a coffee. That's when I saw it. A boot print in the dust by the back door. Fresh. Too fresh. Someone had been inside while I slept. I grabbed the brass key from my pocket, clutching it like a weapon. The box still sat on the mantel where I'd left it, heavy and silent, but the air around it felt charged, like static before a storm. Later that afternoon, I drove into town. I needed answers about the letter, the 30 nights, the brands. The clerk at the feed store, an old-timer who'd known my father, stiffened when I asked. His eyes darted to the door, then back to me. Son, you don't want to tangle with the brands. Whole family's poison. Your daddy knew that better than anyone. What kind of poison? I pressed. He lowered his voice. The kind that don't mind spilling blood over money that isn't theirs. When I pushed again, he shook his head. If your daddy said don't trust him, then don't. That's all you need to know. By the time I got back to the ranch, the sun was sinking blood red. My gut twisted as I saw it. The front door ajar. I killed the engine, heart pounding, and crept up the steps. The hinges groaned as I pushed inside. The house smelled different. Not of dust, not of whiskey, of cologne. Strong, musky, unfamiliar. Someone had been here. Again, I found the evidence in the living room. A single matchbook on the coffee table, printed with a name in bold letters. The Broken Spoke. A rundown bar 20 miles south. And next to it, a playing card. The Ace of Spades. My blood went cold. The Brands weren't hiding anymore. That night, I tried to stay awake. The Rolex ticked. The house groaned. My nerves frayed. Around midnight, the whispers returned. But this time, they weren't alone. I heard boots scuffing on the porch. A shadow stretched across the crack under my bedroom door. "Open up, boy," a drawl said, low and rough. "We know what your daddy left you. Hand it over, and we'll make this easy." My throat locked. I glanced at the mantel. The steel box sat in plain sight, the brass key burning a hole in my pocket. The door rattled. "Don't make us come in." I reached for the drawer of my nightstand, my hand closing around cold steel, my father's old revolver. I cocked the hammer, just as the doorknob turned. The doorknob twisted once, then twice. Before the door exploded inward with a crack of splintering wood, two men filled the frame broad, scarred, their eyes black with intent. One carried a shotgun loose at his side. The other grinned with a chipped tooth and flicked open a switchblade like he was greeting an old friend. I didn't think. I raised my father's revolver and pulled the trigger. The blast shook the room. The switchblade man screamed, clutching his arm as blood sprayed the wall. The second man roared and swung the shotgun up, but I dove behind the bed as buckshot shredded the headboard into splinters. The Rolex ticked steadily on my wrist, like it was keeping count of every second I might still be alive. "Goddamn kid's armed," one of them shouted. "Take the box! Forget him!" the other snapped. I scrambled into the hall as they barreled toward the mantel. The steel box gleamed in the moonlight through the broken window. My father's letter burned in my pocket. "Don't trust the Brands." I raised the revolver again, hands shaking, and fired. The bullet caught the shotgun man in the leg. He bellowed and collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor. The other one, wounded and wild-eyed, grabbed the steel box with his good arm. I charged him. We crashed into the wall, the box slamming into my ribs. Pain shot through me, but adrenaline kept me upright. His knife hand whipped out, grazing my side. I felt the sting of blood, hot and sharp. We wrestled, the whispers swelling around us, louder, clearer now. 30 nights, the Brands will bleed. It wasn't just in my head. I swear the house itself was speaking. The man's grip faltered. I drove my fist into his jaw. He crumpled, unconscious, the box slipping from his hands onto the floor. Silence fell, broken only by the groaning of the man bleeding on the porch. The other lay sprawled at my feet, chest rising shallow and fast. My side burned where the knife had kissed me, but I barely felt it. My eyes were on the box, unopened, untouched, waiting. I bent down, the brass key trembling in my blood-slick hand. I almost slid it into the lock. Almost. But my father's voice, or what I thought was his voice, whispered in my ear. "Not yet. 30 nights." I froze. Headlights washed over the house. Tires crunched on gravel. I staggered to the window just in time to see another car pull up sleek, black and polished. Not like the rusted pickup the Brands drove. This one was different. Cleaner. Professional. A woman stepped out, tall and sharp in a gray suit, her blonde hair pulled tight. She didn't look like she belonged here. Her eyes swept the house, lingering on the broken door, the blood, the box at my feet. She smiled, and then she walked toward me. She stepped across the threshold like she owned the place, heels clicking against the warped floorboards, her gray suit untouched by the dust and blood that clung to everything else. Behind her, the Brands groaned where they lay. She didn't even glance at them. Her attention was fixed squarely on me. "Richard's boy," she said, voice smooth as glass. "You look just like him, though maybe a little less disciplined." My grip on the revolver tightened. "Who the hell are you?" She smiled like I'd asked the right question. "Evelyn, executor of a trust your father never mentioned. And before you ask, yes, the Rolex, the letter, the key, the box, all of it falls under my jurisdiction." The way she said jurisdiction made my skin crawl. She circled the living room slowly, inspecting the wreckage. The unconscious man bleeding on the floor, the broken door, the steel box gleaming on the mantel. "You've had a busy first night," she murmured. "I admire that you're still breathing." "Those men," I began. "The Brands," she cut me off. "They don't scare easily, but they're nothing compared to what's coming. That box doesn't just contain money, Thomas. It contains obligations. Debts your father never paid. If you think the Brands are the only ones who want what's inside, you're already dead." My stomach tightened. "So why are you here?" To make sure you survive long enough to hand it over properly, she said. Richard trusted me. You should too. I almost laughed. Trust? My father's letter had been clear. Don't trust the Brands. He hadn't said anything about Evelyn, but something in her smile made me want to put a bullet between her eyes. Instead, I said nothing. She walked to the mantel and laid her hand gently on the steel box.